Chapter 283. The rabbit-eared girl was wearing something similar to an ancient Chinese palace dress. However, it was much more luxurious than the ones in ancient movies. At the very least, Su Xinxing did not think that the glowing clothes were on the same level as the clothes he was wearing. Qin Xingyin could even vaguely make out the traces of talismans hidden under the patterns on the girl's clothes. After being stunned for less than half a second, the woman was like a frightened rabbit. Her ears perked up and she jumped back. Because the moon's gravity wasn't strong, she jumped at least 30 meters away. She then steadied herself and made a shooting gesture at Su Xinxing and the others. Wait, we're not hostile. Compared to Su Xinxing, who was considering how much strength he should use to beat up the other party without killing the other party, Ying, who had wandered in various civilization circles to search for and taken UKs, was obviously more used to this kind of situation. She immediately opened her mouth and said, "That's right." Su Xinxing noticed that the girl's language had changed into a dialect that was similar to the dialect around Hunan. However, if he listened carefully, it seemed to be a different language. It seemed that this girl was like him. She had the ability to communicate with a foreign race, even if she had never learned it before. Su Xinxing made a mental note. The girl did not answer. However, judging from her cautious expression, she probably did not believe what Ying said at all. Although it's not very nice to say this, it would take a long time to eliminate the other party's wariness and achieve the purpose of communication and intelligence. Su Xinxing sighed. As a fierce person who had chased after a person who was good at disguising and escaping from dozens of worlds, the girl's look of looking for a chance to escape could not escape his eyes. To put it nicely, all creatures follow the law of the jungle. When they are in an extreme disadvantage, they will instinctively follow the strong because of their survival instinct. To put it bluntly, most intelligent creatures are actually quite despicable. Rather than painstakingly building a good relationship with them, it is actually more useful to beat them up. As a creature from a level 3 civilization, don't you have a more peaceful way of thinking? Ying's eyebrows twitched as she asked helplessly. My grandmother said that if someone slaps you on the left side of your face, you have to slap him on the right side until he admits defeat and begs for mercy. Su Xinxing said righteously. In a sense, your grandmother is very powerful. Qin Xingyin complained. Wait a minute. Don't think that you can fool me just because I don't know your proverbs. Ying shouted in dissatisfaction after spending a few seconds on Baidu to find out that she had been tricked. Almost at the same time, the rabbit-eared girl disappeared without a trace. It was not an ability like teleportation. Instead, it was a high-speed movement that was enough to leave an afterimage by relying on the low gravity of the moon. It also used the huge rock next to it to block the line of sight of Su Xinxing and his team, achieving the purpose of escaping from their field of vision. But before she could move far, she found that the guys who were still quarreling with each other appeared in her field of vision again. She seemed to have inexplicably returned to this place. Impossible. Although she did not go out much because her duty was not to patrol, she was still generally familiar with the surrounding terrain. In addition, there was a huge laurel tree as a road sign. It was impossible to go astray here, but the surrounding scenery told her without a doubt that she had indeed returned to this place. Su Xinxing, who originally wanted to chase after the girl, looked at the horrified rabbit-eared girl and asked Ying, who stopped him, "Is this your ability?" To be precise, this is the power that every UK has. As long as we, as an information entanglement, have enough will, the information in the world around us will be affected and distorted into the situation we want. But most UKs appear in the form of objects or non-living things. Therefore, the manifestation of this will be transferred to the person who uses the UK. So, the people who use the UK at the beginning would think that it was a treasure given to them by the heavens. But that is not the case. As if recalling some unpleasant memories, Ying shook her head and looked at the rabbit-eared girl. Running away is useless. If you understand, can we sit down and talk? As she spoke, she opened a retro suitcase she carried with her and poured it out. A few sofas and a tea table fell out with a clatter. There was even a steaming teacup on the tea table. Is this a UK too? Su Shenxing asked curiously as he looked at the purple liquid that was still bubbling in the teacup. No, this is my personal hobby. Ying's face showed no signs of joking. You could try it. It's quite delicious. No need, I don't really like seafood. Su Shenxing looked at the mysterious creature that poked its head out of the teacup like a Loch Ness monster and glanced at him before sinking back down. In the end, he did not dare to drink this strange tea. Unlike Su Shenxing, who was only surprised by Ying's strange taste, the rabbit-eared girl who ran away again, but circled back here in the end, was purely curious and terrified. But her mission did not allow her to be captured by the enemy so easily. Even if the enemy repeatedly claimed that they were not hostile, in this Guanghan secret realm, apart from you two and the few people in the palace, it was a pity that all other creatures were their enemies. Since she could not escape, she could only fight. Unlike Mo Li's wine-red eyes, the rabbit-eared girl's pupils were closer to a bright red. After trying to raise her fighting spirit, there was a different kind of expression in her bright red eyes. Heaven's Eye! Xingyan, a dream, immediately recognized the ability that the enemy used and could not help but exclaim, "Senior, be careful. That is a spell that is closest to the great magic among cultivators." Too late, the rabbit-eared girl thought to herself. Her heavens, I could control light and shadow. Not only could it create illusions, but it could also truly use the power of light and shadow. With the help of her heaven's eye, the boundary between light and shadow began to blur, and a huge bow and arrow appeared in her hands. When all the light was absorbed by the arrow, like a rainbow sucking in water, the arrow with boundless power that could cut through the dawn and bring dawn to all things was finally shot out. One arrow dawn. In the next instant, she and her arrow were stuck to a rock by Su Shenxing. Sorry, what did you just say? Su Shenxing checked the rabbit and found that it did not die, but only fainted. Only then did he ask Qin Xingyan in satisfaction. No, it's nothing. Qin Xingyan speechlessly covered his forehead. As long as you're happy. Chapter 284. That rabbit is running towards here. Quickly chase after it. Just as Su Shenxing and the others were trying their best to get the rabbit-eared girl off the rock, a burst of human voices could be heard from afar. Not long after, a group of brawny men holding axes ran over while cursing. Their figures were particularly tall and sturdy. Almost everyone was over 2 meters tall, and their horizontal width was close to 8 meters. If those muscles were thrown onto Earth, they could beat up bodybuilders until they shit out. It's just that the clothes they wore were somewhat similar to the barbarians of the Stone Age, all of them wearing vests sewn out of huge leaves. Instead, the axes in their hands were shining with a silver light, looking incomparably fine. The broad-bladed axes that were very large for ordinary people looked a lot smaller in their hands. If they all changed into black suits, they could even cosplay as the Axe Gang. I see it. The rabbit is over there. The brawny man leading the group saw the rabbit-eared girl that Su Shenxing and the others managed to get off the rock with great difficulty and couldn't help but shout excitedly. There are also 3 little people. They should be the same as those skinny people who came in a while ago, all of them guys from the outside. Soon after, the brawny man shouted again. Haha, I was just thinking that I didn't get to eat my fill last time. Leave the thigh for me, it's chewy. I can finally eat something else. I've had enough of those damn osmanthus leaves. The other brawny men all let out a burst of noisy laughter. On Su Shenxing's side, other than Ying, who was still unclear about the situation, the expressions of our protagonist and Qin Xingyan all turned cold. From the other party's words, it could be heard that they had already eaten people. Although for the time being, it was still unknown whether the unlucky people who were eaten were the people of Guifang or those cultivators from the outside. For Su Shenxing, eating people was a big crime. Therefore, he didn't say anything else and slowly moved closer to them. Immediately, those brawny men became even happier. In their view, Su Shenxing delivering himself to their doorstep probably had the same meaning as the roast chicken obediently lying on the plate. Unfortunately, this roast chicken was made of titanium alloy. Not only was it unable to fill their stomachs, it would also break their mouths full of teeth when they were within a certain distance. Su Xinxing abruptly threw a punch at the leader. It could be seen that the other party had also lived a life of licking blood from the edge of a blade. Even from his expression, his brain had not yet reacted, and he had already subconsciously used his own axe to block. However, Su Xinxing's fist, which was made of flesh and blood, easily pierced through the surface of the axe as if it was a piece of paper, and then sank into the opponent's chest. Almost in the blink of an eye, the upper body of the burly man had completely turned into a mass of blood foam. Bits of flesh and blood flew in all directions, splashing onto the faces of the burly men behind him. It actually took a punch from me and was only pierced through instead of completely shattering it. The quality of this axe is not bad. Su Xinxing casually removed the axe from his arm. He threw it at his feet and looked at the remaining brawny men. One of them could not bear the fact that his compatriot had been punched into dregs. His eyes were red, and with a roar, he swung his axe at Su Xinxing. However, Su Xinxing stretched out 2 fingers and tightly clamped the blade of the axe. The muscles of the opponent's tree trunk thick arm were tangled, and blue veins were popping out. It seemed that he had used 120% of his strength, but the expression on Su Xinxing's face did not change in the slightest, and the axe did not even tremble. If you don't have any other abilities, then it's over, okay? With a gentle twist, Su Xinxing broke the axe. Then he raised his hand and threw it. Half of the axe blade directly embedded itself into the burly man's head, splitting his head in half. This understatement of an instant kill finally frightened the rest of the brawny men, and they all began to flee. Because the moon's gravity was weak and their physical fitness was very outstanding, their running speed was extremely fast, only a little faster than the rabbit ear girl from before. Su Xinxing was about to step forward to catch up with them, but was stopped by Ying. Although I don't know what's going on, but you're slaughtering other lives, right? She frowned and said, if it's the local creatures killing each other, I can't intervene, but if it's the UK that causes the killing and destruction, then I have to stop it. Oh, then you can stop it. Su Xinxing smiled gently, then looked at the brawny men who had run away in different directions, and then stepped in front of himself fiercely. Suddenly, the whole ground cracked with a bang. Immediately, about 160 degrees in front of him, the fan-shaped ground of the board game with a radius of about 5 kilometers began to rise due to the principle of leverage. At first glance, it looked like petals that were closing. If it were not on the moon, where the gravity was weak, perhaps these petals made of rocks would have begun to collapse due to their own weight. Naturally, those brawny men could not escape that far because the ground suddenly rose. They began to fall back because of the unstable center of gravity. Wait! Before Ying could finish speaking, Su Xinxing waved his hand. Those huge petals that were 5 or 6 times taller than the tallest building on Earth, the Burj Khalifa, were all crushed in a fine powder by a terrifying force invisible to the naked eye and turned into dust in the Guanghan's secret realm together with the brawny men on it. The next moment, the destruction of the huge objects stirred up a storm, which swept up white dust in the Guanghan's secret realm. After doing all this, Su Xinxing stood in the storm, the cheap coat on his body flapping noisily in the strong wind. Only then did he look at Ying and say slowly, "It seems that you couldn't stop me, you bastard." Ying frowned at first, but then an incredulous expression appeared on her face. "You clearly did such a thing. Why is the information distortion in this world close to zero?" But Su Xinxing no longer paid attention to her. Instead, he gestured to Qin Xingyan, and the cultivation girl immediately followed Su Xinxing. Such a big commotion just now must have alarmed the forces in the Guanghan secret realm. Although Qin Xingyan already knew that Su Xinxing was extremely powerful, he still did not expect him to be able to do what he did just now without using any supernatural power. So what if they were alarmed? Or rather, this is my original style. Rather than making me go through untold hardships to find them, it's more convenient for them to come directly to me. Su Xinxing laughed a little self-deprecatingly, then looked at the huge laurel tree. After 3 years of recuperation on Earth, I've become timid. Since it's not easy to come to the moon this time, I'll be a little presumptuous and make a big scene. Chapter 285. There's a large number of life forces coming this way. The type is similar to those people from before. Although Su Xinxing said so, Qin Xingyin could not really do nothing and just wait for others to come to him. So she closed her eyes and investigated the surroundings on behalf of Su Xinxing. She gently clenched her right hand and then opened it again. A lifelike miniature map appeared on her palm. This was a strange technique that could only be practiced after practicing Thought Steal and Thunder Palm. It was also one of the unique techniques of the Bailu Temple, known as the palm reading technique. It was said that if one practiced it to a high level, he or she would be able to see through heaven and earth and wield it for thousands of miles. Of course, Qin Xingyin had not reached that level yet. It was already very difficult for him to grasp the location of all the creatures within a radius of 10 miles that could trigger Thought Steal. In fact, after spending some time with Su Xinxing, Qin Xingyin understood that under Su Xinxing's tyrannical strength, there was almost no ability to find enemies. That was why he decided to practice this technique, which was regarded as useless by most of the disciples of the Bailu Temple. Su Xinxing, who saw Qin Xingyin use this technique for the first time, could not help but ask curiously, "Is there a big boss-like guy in there?" No one with a particularly strong aura. Qin Xingyin shook his head and replied, "You've worked hard." Seeing that the girl's forehead had begun to sweat, Su Xinxing patted her shoulder, indicating that she did not need to maintain this technique anymore. "Then what are you going to do?" Ing, who seemed to be still angry, looked on coldly from the side and said, "Destroy them all again." Although this proposal is also very attractive, it's better to put it aside for the time being. Su Xinxing touched his chin. Because he had not shaved with the holy sword for a few days, stubble had begun to grow on his chin. Obviously, the other party's leader is not stupid. After seeing the scene just now, he has no intention of risking his life. It's useless to continue to exterminate these guys. According to my experience, the leaders who use this kind of insect swarm tactic are basically the type who are very weak and extremely afraid of death. If we kill a lot of their active forces, it won't be long before the other party's leader hides. It will be difficult to find him then. After all, I'm not good at hide and seek. Blowing up the entire moon is not in line with my original intention of coming to the moon. At this point, Su Xinxing scratched the back of his head and said, "What's our original intention of coming to the moon?" "To ask the people of the Guifang people for information." Qin Xingyin reminded him in a timely manner. "Yes, that's it." Su Xinxing cast an admiring look at her and said, "If we blow up the moon so casually, the people of the Guifang people will most likely not cooperate with me." No, before this, blowing up the moon without saying a word was already a big problem, right? Qin Xingyin complained in his heart. If the people of the Guifang people you're talking about are the indigenous people of this planet, I think before considering whether they will cooperate with us, you have to first ensure that they won't die because of the explosion of this planet. Ing sighed helplessly. Well, in that case, it's more important to go directly to their leader. Su Xinxing did not seem to notice Ying's exhausted appearance, but continued to say, "Xingyin, can you find out where their leader is?" "I'll try. It may take some time." Qin Xingyin was just about to use the palm reading technique again, but his face suddenly showed a puzzled look. "What's wrong?" Su Xinxing asked, puzzled. "The people surrounding us have sped up. Their aura has also suddenly increased a lot, but the feedback from his telepathy is extremely chaotic. It feels like..." Before Qin Xingyin finished speaking, Su Xinxing continued, "Like they've gone berserk?" "Well, that's pretty much it." "Senior, can you feel it too?" Su Xinxing asked with some surprise. "No, it's just that the fastest group of guests has arrived." Su Xinxing pointed not far away. A few guys similar to the brawny man he slapped into dregs were approaching at an extremely fast speed. Their eyes were red, their mouths were wide open, and they were roaring in a way that ordinary people could not understand. They were waving axes that were carved out of millstones in their hands, running and jumping with momentum as if they wanted to chop Su Xinxing and the others into pieces. In the blink of an eye, they were only a few hundred meters away from the three of them, probably afraid that Su Xinxing would slap them to death again. The one who made the first move this time was actually Ying. The girl took out a small bag of melon seeds from her pocket. Yes, it was the kind of melon seeds that housewives often munched on while chatting about their daily lives. Su Xinxing even saw the familiar logo and the words milk-flavored on the package, so he immediately reacted. Damn it, this small bag of melon seeds was taken from his fruit bowl. The girl tore the plastic bag quickly, but it was too strong and could not tear it open. Of course, it did not rule out the possibility that the melon seeds had been in Su Xinxing's fruit bowl for too long, so it was contaminated with a little protective power. So she simply opened her mouth and used her small canine teeth to bite open a hole in the plastic bag, and then she did not hesitate to sprinkle a few melon seeds out. Although I don't think there's anyone who doesn't know, but for the time being, the melon seeds sold in the supermarket are all ripe. They can't sprout and grow like real seeds. Su Xinxing's family was no exception. Even if Su Xinxing was the savior, there was no way he could make the ripe melon seeds take root and sprout. But the girl did it, and the process was a little unbelievable. In just a short moment, the huge sunflowers broke out of the ground and formed a cage-like structure, trapping all the people who attacked her inside. How did you do it? I mean, let this thing sprout? Su Xinxing asked in surprise. Of course it's with the help of UK's power. Ing took out a yellow bag from the suitcase. UK084, plant growth stimulant. It's a special fertilizer. Just a little bit is enough to make almost all plants grow like crazy, even if they're dead seeds. Moreover, it has a self-replicating function. Only when this bag is full will it stop self-replicating. It can be said that it will never be used up. At first, the people in that world thought that they could use it to increase the production of all kinds of food, but when I went to contain it, that world only had plants left. Su Xinxing only had one thought at this time. Damn, so there really is such a thing as Jinkala in this world. Chapter 286. Does Jinkala work on that thing? Su Xinxing pointed at the huge laurel tree in the distance and asked the girl. It's the UK084 plant growth stimulant. The girl corrected herself. The girl tried her best to correct him. To be honest, I've never used UK084 on such a huge plant. After all, this thing itself has a certain degree of danger, Su Xinxing pondered. Although he subconsciously believed that the chaos in the Guanghan secret realm had something to do with the laurel tree that was about to wither, it didn't seem like a good idea to go directly to the tree and scatter Jinkala. Perhaps he should find a way to figure out the cause and effect of the whole thing first. While he was pondering, a few more batches of berserk men attacked this side, but they were all captured by Ying, just like what she had done before. Speaking of which, Xingyan, do you have any idea about their current state? My mind-reading ability can't read their minds. Their thoughts are too chaotic right now. I can't even sort them out. Qin Xingyan replied in a slightly apologetic tone. But looking at it from another perspective, under normal circumstances, humans have a considerable degree of rationality and logic, so it's not easy to control them. But after they've become crazy, it's easier to use suggestions to manipulate their behavior. Speaking up to this point, the cultivator girl revealed a somewhat doubtful expression. But in fact, manipulating mortals isn't that difficult. Even I know some methods to interfere with human memories. With a little psychological suggestion on top of that, I can achieve a level similar to manipulating human behavior. If we mess up their brains just to make it easier to control them, I feel like we're making a mountain out of a molehill. I see. Su Xinxing had some ideas. The method you mentioned is probably more useful when there are fewer people. When there are more people, I'm afraid there won't be enough time to modify people's memories and use suggestions one by one, right? Are you saying that the mastermind behind this time did such a violent thing in order to control everyone in one go? Qin Xingyan frowned, somewhat unable to understand. But what's the point of doing this? And these people clearly looked normal just now. Why did they suddenly go crazy? The first question should be answered once we catch the mastermind. As for the second question, if I'm not mistaken, the mastermind must have implanted a switch in these people's minds, like go berserk upon receiving a signal or something like that. Su Xinxing didn't think much of it. I've fought with similar enemies before. This kind of method is not rare. So in conclusion, in the end, he still had to go to the enemy's nest. Su Xinxing couldn't help but sigh. He, Qin Xingyan, and Ing moved in the direction of these men. After walking for a while, the rabbit-eared girl that Su Xinxing carried on his shoulder like a sack woke up. She understood her situation almost instantly. Although she was a little puzzled as to why Su Xinxing and the others didn't use ropes or restrictions to restrict her movements, she immediately struggled to jump down from Su Xinxing's shoulder and jump back with a very déjà vu action, distancing herself from him. From this point of view, the rabbit-eared girl's physique was much stronger than that of a human. At least, if an ordinary person was slapped to the wall by Su Xinxing, they probably wouldn't wake up for a day or two. Even if they woke up, they would have to lie in a hospital bed for a few days before their bones could grow back. How could they be as lively as her? The rabbit-eared girl looked around and found that they were only a step away from the enemy's base. She couldn't help but show a nervous expression on her face. You said you weren't hostile. Didn't you catch me and bring me to this place? Su Xinxing thought for 3 seconds and felt that it was too troublesome to explain clearly. So he waved his hand and broke a huge boulder as high as a small hill next to him, and then threatened the rabbit. I ask, and you answer. If you don't ask, don't talk nonsense, understand? Although the rabbit-eared girl was scared by Su Xinxing's sudden attack, she still refused very firmly. Humph, don't even think about it. You two, will not succumb to the despotic power of the son of Wu Gang. Oh, you're still so arrogant, little guy. The corner of Su Xinxing's mouth twitched, and Qin Xingyan's wow. Senior, you're too good at pretending to be a bad guy, aren't you? He and Ying's, I don't think this is a pretense, but a real bad guy, whispered to the back of his mind, and decided to wait until he returned to Earth to settle accounts with them, and then continue to try to squeeze out a bad guy's face. He approached the girl at lightning speed and grabbed the girl's lapel, and then laughed. Didn't you jump quite high? It doesn't matter if you jump a little higher, right? After that, he exerted force on his feet and disappeared with the rabbit-eared girl like a rocket with a whoosh. Nobody knew how long had passed, but suddenly there was a loud bang in the sky, as if something had hit the lid of a pot. After a short while, a black shadow fell from the sky with a squeak and smashed a big hole in the ground. Qin Xingyan and the others hurried to the edge of the hole and found that it was Su Xinxing who was holding the rabbit-eared girl in the hole. The rabbit-eared girl's eyes had already turned into mosquito coils, and she seemed to have fainted again, but at least from the outside, she didn't seem to be injured. Su Xinxing, on the other hand, looked a little embarrassed. Seeing Qin Xingyan and the others, Su Xinxing sat up from the hole, grimacing, and said, Damn, this Guanghan secret realm actually has a ceiling. When I found out just now, it was already too late to change direction, and my whole body hit that thing like a pancake. Fortunately, I reacted in time and blocked it for this guy. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a pancake but a pie, and the kind with rabbit meat filling. I don't know if that hit just now made a hole in the ceiling. The air content is normal, and the temperature and other environmental data are basically unchanged. Ing glanced around and said to Su Xinxing, Looks like it's not broken. Well, at least it's not broken yet. In other words, there's a possibility of it being broken, right? Su Xinxing suddenly felt as if he was facing a great enemy. Damn, we have to quickly solve the problem here, find the people of Guifang, and then leave quickly. I don't have the money to repair the ceiling. Qin Xingyan, why was the person who had just said with a domineering face that he was going to blow up the moon suddenly acting like a coward here? Speaking of which, this guy fainted again. Did you get any useful information? Ing asked. Does this rabbit's fear of heights count? Chapter 287. Not long after, Su Xinxing and the others came to a place suspected to be the enemy's base camp, a palace built on the mountainside. However, the palace seemed to have just been hit by the flames of war. It looked a little dilapidated, with traces of damage that had not yet been repaired. Even on the mountain path leading to the palace and in the corners of the palace, there were some corpses that had not been cleaned up. Among them were the big men who used axes, as well as the petite rabbits. In fact, on the way here, Su Xinxing and the others had already encountered several small battlefields. The two sides of the battle were the burly men who were called sons of Wu Gang by the Yu rabbits, and the girls with rabbit ears. Judging from the situation of those battlefields, the Yu rabbits had the advantage in terms of individual combat effectiveness, but the sons of Wu Gang had the advantage in numbers, and their unreasonable physical strength could also put the Yu rabbits into a difficult battle. In almost every battlefield, the Yu rabbits could barely maintain the level of immediate collapse. When he first encountered such a battle, Su Xinxing helped the Yu rabbits. However, as soon as the sons of Wu Gang died, the Yu rabbits attacked Su Xinxing and the others without any explanation. This made Su Xinxing very unhappy. After planting all the Yu rabbits into the ground, leaving only their heads exposed, he continued to walk on the mountain path with Qin Xingyin and the others. Even if he encountered such a battle again, he was too lazy to intervene unless the two groups of people in the battle provoked him first. After entering the dilapidated palace, the first thing that Su Xinxing and the others saw was a man sitting on a huge imperial throne. The man looked very old. His messy white beard reached his waist, and his hair was snow white. There was no trace of him taking care of himself. His limbs looked shriveled and skinny. He was literally skin and bones. What was more surprising was that his hands and feet were nailed to the imperial throne by huge iron nails. He could not move at all. He looked very pitiful. "Who are you?" Su Xinxing did not let the man go just because he looked like Stephen Hawking. In his fighting career, there were several times when he let his guard down because of the weak appearance of his opponents. As a result, he was taught a lesson by his opponents. Fortunately, at that time, Su Xinxing had already become thick-skinned, so the man did not beat Su Xinxing. Instead, Su Xinxing returned the favor. "You're from the outside, right? As for me, I have many names. Some of them are so old that I can't remember them clearly," the old man said. His voice was very hoarse, and his tone was quite slow. Just by listening to him, one could feel a strong sense of history. "But I only have one favorite name. You can also call me by that name. I am Wu Gang." As natives of the Celestial Empire, Su Xinxing and Qin Xingyin were surprised. When they fought with the gods in Fusong mythology, they did not feel it because of their different cultural circles. But in the Celestial Empire, Su Xinxing was a little surprised when he met a famous guy in ancient mythology. After all, he had heard those famous names since childhood. Of course, he was just surprised. Even if he learned about the legend of the old man through Google or Baidu, she would not show any different expression. After all, although the history of the Celestial Empire was long on the Earth, the time when this girl got lost was about half of the time in the Celestial Empire. Plus, because of work, 9 out of 10 times she took in the UK, she only had time to collect the corpse of a civilization. So naturally, she would not have too much feelings about the gods in this world. It was almost the same as the astronauts in the interstellar era who were used to seeing planets explode on the spot would hardly have any respect for a patrol officer in a residential area. Those burly men, in the words of the rabbits, they're the sons of Wu Gang. What do they have to do with you? Su Xinxing sorted out his thoughts and asked the old man. It was not that he suddenly became civilized and did not want to use the usual method of asking, physics, to get information. It was just that the old man looked so weak that Su Xinxing had some scruples. He was afraid that the old man would die if he stretched out his finger. "They're similar to my clones." The man coughed, then answered honestly, "The laurel is something I planted, and only I can take care of it. No one else can. But even though I've eaten the peach of immortality, I can't maintain my youth forever. What's more, the person I adore has already passed away. To be honest, I don't want to continue living. But those in the moon god's palace can't leave the laurel. It is the foundation of this small world, the source of everything. So, they came up with a way to create those people with the laurel in my blood. The first group of people all recognized me as their father. I taught them carefully, so they are called the sons of Wu Gang by the moon rabbit. According to the chromosome information, those burly men should be his clones." Ing also added after investigating the information about Wu Gang. Su Xinxing was also very happy. After dawdling for so long, he finally found someone who knew the situation and was willing to talk to them. "Then how did you become like this? Unlike Su Xinxing and Ing, As a member of the Celestial Empire's cultivation system, Qin Xingyin had more complicated feelings about this mythical figure. She hesitated for a moment and could not help but ask. As I grew older, I originally planned to end my own life like the person I admired. However, just as I was about to do so, I was knocked unconscious by an unknown attack. When I woke up, my body was already imprisoned in this seat. This topic was undoubtedly Wu Gang's sore spot. His voice trembled. At first, I thought it was those treacherous children who attacked me, because in the experiment, only my blood could create them stably, and using their blood would have a high possibility of tissue collapse, turning the newly created individuals into meatballs. But soon, I found that the truth was not that simple. Could it be the Moon God's palace that you said secretly did this? Su Xinxing tried to guess based on the information he knew. No, the current ruler of the Moon God's palace is a kind person. She would not do such a thing. In fact, I found that there was an unknown consciousness lurking in the minds of the sons of Wu Gang and weaving a huge net. That consciousness was crazy and powerful, chaotic and evil. As if recalling the horror of that consciousness, Wu Gang shivered. It easily destroyed the minds of the newborn sons of Wu Gang, subtly changed the leaders I taught, and finally took control of the entire population of Wu Gang's sons. By the time I found out about this, it was already too late to stop it. Chapter 288. In short, you just need to get rid of the evil will, right? After listening to Wu Gang's description, Su Xinxing's eyes lit up. For him, the beginning, the process, and the result were unnecessary. He only needed to know 3 things. Who should he attack? Or should he attack? Should he attack to death? In a word, yes. Wu Gang was not used to Su Xinxing's way of thinking. After being stunned for a while, he reluctantly responded, "However, ordinary attacks are useless against the evil will. I don't know how to really get rid of the evil will. Or rather, I don't even know what the evil will is. It's okay. There will always be a way." Su Xinxing was quite optimistic about this matter. Wasn't it just to beat the evil spirit out of the body? It was not like he had never done an out-of-body experience. After beating the evil will out of the body, the rest of the matter would be much easier. But then again, after listening to Su Xinxing's plan, Qin Xingyin suddenly thought of something and asked Wu Gang, "Why are there no children of Wu Gang in this hall? Since you are an important existence that can mass-produce them, you shouldn't be so defenseless and stay here carelessly, right?" Indeed, using the insect swarm as an analogy, Wu Gang was the body of the mother insect, and the evil will that controlled all of Wu Gang's children was the spirit of the mother insect. No matter how one looked at it, Wu Gang should be strictly guarded. It was indeed strange to just throw him aside casually. At this moment, Su Xinxing suddenly raised his head. He felt an overwhelming malice shrouding the palace. For an instant, he thought that this malicious intent was an area attack that targeted everyone within the hall. However, right after that, he realized that this malicious intent wasn't targeted at everyone, and it had only targeted him since the very beginning. Senior, all the children of Wu Gang in the surrounding area suddenly began to surround here. Qin Xingyin's face also changed, and he warned Su Xinxing. But immediately she showed a strange expression. No, they stopped again? This is... Oh, I see. Su Xinxing let out a long sigh. They had been the target of the evil will from the very beginning. No, to be precise, it was purely aimed at Su Xinxing himself. Knowing that no matter how many sons of Wu Gang there were, they could not stop Su Xinxing from finding Wu Gang, so they simply withdrew all the sons of Wu Gang here. Later, they calculated that it would take some time for them to talk with Wu Gang, so they took advantage of that time to mobilize troops and besiege the palace. Of course, if he knew Su Xinxing well, he would not do something as stupid as letting the sons of Wu Gang besiege him. With the strength of these clones, no matter how many sons of Wu Gang there were, they could not delay Su Xinxing for even 1 second. Therefore, if Su Xinxing's guess was correct, the situation was not good. Within the Moon God Hall, the new Moon God Phoebe, dressed in bright silver clothes, was pacing back and forth anxiously. Although the moon rabbits were still trying their best to resist, if this continued, the moon god hall would fall sooner or later. Although I know that you are very anxious now, pacing back and forth like this is making me dizzy. Luna sighed and said to her companion, "Isn't it all because of you? If you had stopped Her Highness when she sneaked away, we wouldn't be in such a passive situation now." Artemis also said that he was going to find Her Highness and left. Those bastards are really something. They chose to rebel when Artemis and Hecate are not here. Isn't this normal? If Artemis and Hecate were here, it would be strange if they dared to rebel. Luna said the truth. Because of the 4 moon goddesses, we are the most useless. Would anyone say that they are useless? Although it is the truth. Phoebe scratched her long hair in distress until her long flaxen hair became messy. If Her Highness isn't here, we can't use the power of Laurel at all. Only Hecate can use the power of the Nethermoon. The arrow of the moon god has also been taken away by Artemis. It looks like we only have a bad hand. Actually, I'm more curious as to why Wu Gang's children suddenly rebelled. If they were afraid of Artemis and Hecate, then they have been gone for a long time. They might come back at any time. They didn't rebel when they just left, but now they are. No matter how I look at it, there is something fishy going on. Luna, on the other hand, was still calmly analyzing the situation. Is there any point in saying this now? Phoebe muttered as she looked at Luna, who was so calm that it seemed as if she didn't know that the moon god's palace could fall at any time. Of course there is. Maybe if we figure this out and find the right remedy, the rebels will fall apart on their own? Luna said casually. Really? Let me think. Phoebe was pleasantly surprised. She then began to think hard. Is it because they have too much work to take care of the moon laurel? But the moon rabbits have a lot of work to do too. How did the people on Earth calm down this situation? Just as she was vexed over this somewhat irrelevant question, a rabbit-eared girl ran in and hurriedly reported an urgent situation to the 2 moon gods. What did you say? Phoebe was stunned after hearing the girl's report. You're saying that Wu Gang's children suddenly surrounded the palace they occupied, and then they all committed suicide? How was that possible? Luna raised her slender eyebrows and quickly walked out of the moon god's palace. Phoebe saw this and hurriedly followed after her. Almost at the same time, a scarlet light erupted from the palace that had been occupied by Wu Gang's son in the distance. Immediately, it turned into a huge pillar of light. As a god, Luna could vaguely make out that within the pillar of light, which was about as thick as the trunk of the moon laurel, there were dense sacrificial lights that looked like nodes of a formation. Moreover, as the strange smell of blood filled the air, the scarlet light became more and more intense. As expected, the suicides are to activate some kind of ritual, Luna said in a low voice. For the first time, a look of bewilderment appeared on her face. What the hell is going on? Phoebe was so scared that her face turned pale. She sat on the ground and stared blankly at the terrifying and ominous scarlet pillar of light. What's going to happen to the moon god's palace? It wasn't just her. The moon rabbits had never seen something like this before, and they all looked at the huge pillar of light with fear in their eyes. In the end, the ominous scarlet overflowed from the moon's secret realm and quickly covered the entire moon. Until the end of this process, not a single person escaped from the palace. Chapter 289. For the ordinary people living in Jiangjin, today was a normal day. Unfortunately, the Changsha Xian was not an ordinary person. Jiangjin was a very special city. The Changsha Xian had been wandering in the human world for a long time, but it was the first time he saw a place where humans and monsters got along so well. Although it seemed that the monsters that were harmful to humans had mysteriously disappeared, fortunately, the mountain ghost he played had a good reputation among humans, especially among human sorcerers. At least until today, no exorcist had come to find trouble with him. Ow, help me get my clothes, the Chang Shaoxian said to the ferret-like creature lying next to the bed. He began to reflect from the bottom of his heart that he seemed to have become a lot lazier after moving out of the student dormitory. Can you not call me by this name? It sounds like a big tin can. The ferret took a jacket from the sofa beside the bed and complained vaguely. Okay, I know. Where's Hecate? The Chang Xiaoxian put on the jacket casually and casually. After he finished putting on the jacket, he found that the other frequent guest who usually stayed in the bedroom was gone. He asked the ferret-like creature, "You always say that." She's probably watching TV in the living room. She seems to be addicted to human TV shows recently. Last night, she was biting my tail and talking her sleep. Something like bitches are pretentious or bastards dare to come here. What is she watching? In this regard, the Chang Xiaoxian could only reply with a hollow laugh. Unlike Artemis, who specifically came to find him, Hecate left the moon because she wanted to move freely on Earth. He did not expect that in less than 100 years, she would become a female otaku that even Artemis felt inferior to. It could only be said that the human entertainment industry in this era was so powerful that even the moon goddess who had lived for thousands of years was easily corrupted by it. "Isn't today the weekend? Your Highness, where are you going?" Artemis, who had turned into an Li, asked in confusion. "It's the school's anniversary in 2 days. The classroom that our class is assigned to isn't ready yet. Also, we need to prepare a special set of clothes for that day. I remember that your class project is to roast pre-cafe. What a strange name. It's cosplay, but I don't know much about this kind of thing, so I should just buy a maid costume." Chang Xiaoxian sighed. "I'm just a waiter. Moreover, it was the kind that the entire class voted for. As I said before, Your Highness, you can actually use magic to make yourself a little uglier. If you're too beautiful, you'll only attract inconvenience in human society." Artemis brought up the old matter again. "It's still not too late. As long as we create a car accident and you pretend to be disfigured." "I refuse." The girl crossed her arms without hesitation and made a cross in front of her chest. Which girl would deliberately make herself ugly? And to the extent of disfigurement from a car accident, I don't want it. How about the script of being attacked by a guy who had confessed to her, but was rejected, and being splashed with concentrated sulfuric acid? I'm confident that I can play the role of that guy well. Why must I disfigure myself? You actually hate me a lot. No. I like Your Highness the most. I can't wait to let the whole world know how adorable Your Highness is. Otherwise, I'll secretly take a video of Your Highness bathing yesterday and upload it to YouTube. Stop, Mother of the Heavenly Kingdom, although it's not good to say this, the few moon goddess sisters that you left behind to assist me are a little weird. Jiangjin wasn't considered a first-tier city, but because it was located along the coast, it wasn't far from some developed cities. Thus, its development was not bad. Even the extremely unpopular cosplay shops could be found here. Whoa, as expected, I still don't know much about cosplay. What's with these clothes? There's only a few strips of cloth left. Can it cover the important parts? Chang Xiaoxian looked at the popular cosplay section and couldn't help but blush. Chang Xiaoxian, because the clothing shop was unexpectedly big, just as she was hesitating where to go to buy maid outfits. Someone suddenly called out her name. From the tone of the voice, it seemed that the person was quite surprised. Chang Xiaoxian turned around, and a smile appeared on her face. "Senior Song Yu." To Chang Xiaoxian, Song Yu was a very special human. After wandering in the human world for close to 100 years, although she didn't dare to say that she could see through people's hearts, her foresight was definitely much better than normal people. Not long after entering Jiangjin University, she noticed Song Yu's hostility towards her. Because she had a clear understanding of her own beauty, this wasn't the first time Chang Xiaoxian had encountered this kind of hostility. Originally, she was already mentally prepared for the other party to make things difficult for her. She even specifically told Artemis and Hecate not to make a move on Song Yu because of some small matters. After all, Jiangjin was a bit strange. Almost none of the supernatural creatures that dared to make a move on humans could live past the next day. In the end, the expected difficulties didn't appear. For the first time, Chang Xiaoxian made a mistake. It was true that Song Yu was somewhat hostile towards Chang Xiaoxian, but it wasn't because she was filled with hatred and undisguised malice. She simply saw her as a competitor. Even though she was defeated time and time again, Song Yu wasn't discouraged. After enriching herself, she continued to face difficulties. This made Chang Xiaoxian, who had never met a fair competitor before, and who she met in the past were either enemies or friends. This was the first time she had such a special relationship with someone, which made her very happy. However, this relationship only lasted until a certain literary performance. At that time, Chang Xiaoxian was chosen as the female host by the teacher who was preparing for the performance purely because of her appearance. Song Yu, who originally had rich hosting experience, was eliminated and left in a daze. Although Chang Xiaoxian was very worried about Song Yu at that time, because she had to prepare for the performance in a short time, she had a lot of work to do. She didn't have time to visit her. She originally thought that Song Yu would not admit defeat and compete with her in other projects like before. However, after that, Song Yu never had such a competition with her again. This made Chang Xiaoxian feel a subtle sense of loss. She felt that the unfair competition must have made Song Yu disheartened. Because of this, Chang Xiaoxian moved out of the student apartment. As a result, it didn't take long for Song Yu to rise to fame and become a popular actress in the music industry. Her popularity was comparable to that of the heavenly kings and queens. This made Chang Xiaoxian surprised and happy for Song Yu. However, after a period of time, Song Yu once again disappeared without a trace. Although she could often be seen at school, there was not a single bit of news about her in the entertainment industry. At the same time, Song Yu seemed to have other goals. She was always like a girl in love, running around with girly behavior and no longer looking for trouble with Chang Xiaoxian. Facing such a wonderful senior, Chang Xiaoxian naturally had a special feeling. Chapter 290. Song Yu, who had brought Yi Qiuyue along, was here to buy maid outfits. This was also one of the tasks that Su Xinxing gave her before he left. She just didn't expect to meet the current campus belle of Jiangjin University, Chang Xiaoxian, in this kind of place. Although she used to have some misgivings about this little girl, after knowing Su Xinxing and seeing many supernatural phenomena, she had already let it go. Naturally, she didn't have any misgivings about Chang Xiaoxian in her heart. Xiaoxian, you're also here to buy clothes. Therefore, she very intimately greeted the other party. Chang Xiaoxian looked at Chiketsu, who was holding hands with Song Yu. The little girl was a little shy, perhaps because she wasn't used to the fanatical atmosphere of the cosplay clothing store. At this time, she was timidly hiding behind Song Yu and cautiously poking out half of her face. Is this senior sister's child? Chang Xiaoxian's eyes paused for a moment. Then she asked suspiciously. Song Yu's face suddenly turned red. No. She subconsciously raised her voice, which made Chiketsu jump in fright, and at the same time, attracted the attention of the people around them. After realizing this, the girl tried to calm herself down. Then she explained in a low voice, her name is Chiketsu. She's my friend's sister. After saying this, she touched Chiketsu's head with a little encouragement. The little girl summoned up her courage, poked out half of her body, and nodded cutely at Chang Xiaoxian. Hello. Chang Xiaoxian lowered her head, her neat bangs casting a shadow on her fair face, making it impossible to see her expression. Hello what? Song Yu asked curiously. So cute. Chang Xiaoxian's voice attracted the surrounding people's attention again, but the girl didn't mind. Instead, she squatted down like a strange uncle and waved at Chiketsu. Little Chiketsu. Come to sister, she was obviously a beautiful girl, but her appearance was so regretful that it scared Chiketsu so much that he hid behind Song Yu. I say, don't scare her. Helplessly, Song Yu gently knocked on Chang Xiaoxian's forehead, making her let out a cute moan. Sorry, I accidentally lost my mind. Chang Xiaoxian rubbed her forehead where she was knocked and said seriously, I'll reflect on myself. That's good. Next time, I'll bring a lollipop to lure Chiketsu. How is this self-reflection? At the end of Song Yu's ridicule, the two of them looked at each other and smiled. It was as if they had met each other and smiled. Next, the three of them began to buy maid outfits based on the measurements of the tenants left behind by Su Xinxing. With the help of Chang Xiaoxian and Yi Qiuyue, who were two large and small clothes racks, the task of buying maid outfits was completed very quickly. It didn't take long for the task to be completed. I'm so happy today. Chang Xiaoxian was carrying a few bags of clothes, only one of which was hers. She helped Song, you carry the rest. What do you want to eat for lunch? I'll treat. We have to go back for lunch because there's a patient at home, Song said with some regret. Although Su Shunxing had specially left a spirit ghost to look after the lowly, it was too pitiful to eat alone at home, because the others were all ghosts. Then there's nothing we can do. Chang Xiaoxian returned the clothes in her hands to Song Yu with a look of regret. Just as she was about to say something, the sky suddenly darkened as if it was covered by dark clouds. Everyone subconsciously looked up at the sky and saw a scene that they would never forget for the rest of their lives. It was clearly noon, but half of the daytime sky was dyed black. In a night sky that was constantly rippling like water, a scarlet moon hung high in the sky. That kind of strange feeling made people's hair stand on end. What's going on? Songyu was a little shocked. She vaguely remembered that Su Xinxing and the others seemed to be planning to go to the moon. Could it be that this strange phenomenon had something to do with them? Chang Xiaoxian was even more surprised than her. As the princess of the moon and the uncrowned king of the Guanghan secret realm, no one was more familiar with the planet hanging high in the sky than her. It was not a real moon, but another moon that was like a mirror on the surface of the moon where the Guanghan secret realm was located. Sorry, next time we have a chance to play together. Chang Xiaoxian patted her face to make sure that she was not dreaming. After saying something to Song Yu and the others, she ran back to her apartment. Although she usually tried her best to hide, she could not care so much now. She exerted a speed that was far beyond the limit of human limits. In less than half a minute, she ran back to the place she temporarily rented several kilometers away. Artemis, did you see the situation outside? As soon as she got home, Chang Xiaoxian asked loudly without even changing her shoes. Yes, Your Highness. Artemis, who had turned into Wenli, said softly, It's a very unusual situation. Maybe something bad happened in the Moon God Palace. Where's Hecate? Still in the living room. So the two ran to the living room together. Hecate, who was originally in the appearance of a red leopard, had turned back into the appearance of a goddess. Her black lace dress vividly outlined her dangerous and mysterious aura. She was holding a can of beer in her hand and staring at the TV with a mocking look on her face. The TV was broadcasting emergency news. A bald professor was trying to calm the people and prevent panic. It seemed that this strange phenomenon of the crimson moon did not only occur in Jiangjin. It's all because of the reflection of the sun through Venus. Nonsense. Hecate drank the beer in the can in one gulp. Then, she crushed the can into a ball and threw it into the trash can. She turned around and said, Your Highness, I've been waiting for you for a long time. Time is of the essence. Use the moonlight shuttle. The Chang Xiaoxian took a deep breath. Her eyes suddenly became firm. Okay. Artemis nodded. That's how it should be. Hecate smiled. Under their gazes, Chang Xiaoxian casually found a large enough mirror and fixed it at a position where the moon could be reflected. After that, she slightly adjusted the angle of the mirror, then threw a small piece of jade onto the mirror. But the shuttle did not stop on the mirror. Instead, it sank into the mirror like a stone thrown into water, and the mirror itself began to emit a strange red light. TSK, is it really okay? Didn't this thing emit white light before? Hecate frowned and said, Don't worry about it. The Chang Xiaoxian did not hesitate and started running. Then, with an athletic ability that ordinary people could not reach, she easily jumped into the mirror with a standard hurdle. Your Highness is really making things difficult for people. Seeing Artemis jump in, Hecate complained. Then, she quickly followed and jumped into the mirror together. Suddenly, in the originally noisy rental room, only the TV was left. It was still playing the emergency notice over and over again. It's just the reflection of Venus. Chapter 291. There were two sides to the story. When the entire Guanghan secret realm was filled with crimson light, Mo Li and Fu Sang's master and servant who were resting at the edge of the Guanghan secret realm were attracted by the pillar of light. However, Mo Li quickly came back to his senses. He opened his hands and set up a barrier around them. Not long after, the enchantment began to rumble as if it had been attacked by an invisible force. When the bell tolled for the second time, fine cracks began to appear on the barrier. If it wasn't for Su Xinxing releasing some of the seals on Mo Li, they would have been completely wiped out. What's going on? Chihaya Fukuyama, who had subconsciously covered her ears because of the loud noise, asked loudly. There's an enemy attacking us. Jasmine carefully sensed the malice that was about to materialize as it rushed towards her. The target might be Nest. What? Chihaya Fukuyama had just let go when she heard Mo Li's words and was stunned. I'll remove the barrier to attract its attention. Take advantage of that opportunity to escape. After the third loud noise, the barrier began to show signs of shattering. The malice was like sticky mud that gradually seeped into the barrier. Even if it wasn't directed at Fu Sang and her servant, the two of them still felt an inexplicable sense of fear. Stop joking. What kind of god would leave a little girl behind and run away with his tail between his legs? Chihaya Fukuyama gritted her teeth and stood up. She tried to recall the method that Earth Loli had taught her and began to mobilize her divine power. That's right. Chihaya Sama isn't such a heartless person. Emoli, Sama, please don't say such hurtful words. Asahi Sakura Kanji also said. At the same time, Miko-sama had already taken out her talisman and imperial coin. She also revealed the rope tied to her calf. If that's the case, Emoli glanced at them and said without hesitation, retreat immediately. After she finished speaking, she clapped her hands together, making a soft paw sound. As a result, the scenery around them changed rapidly. By the time Chihaya Fukuyama and the others came back to their senses, they realized that they had already returned to Sakura apartment. At the entrance, Songyu, who was hugging a pile of clothes, looked at them in shock. Little Chiketsu, on the other hand, was still changing his shoes and did not see the scene of them suddenly appearing at home. Wait a moment. Chihaya Fukuyama turned around and stared at Emoli. He was so surprised that he didn't even realize that he was speaking in Japanese. What about Su Sang? If it's the landlord, it's fine, Emoli said calmly. Are you kidding me? The moon has become like that. How can you say that it has nothing to do with it? Qinzhao Shinshan couldn't help but grab Jasmine's collar, pulling the girl in front of her and shouting, Chihaya, Nei-san, are you guys back already? Chiketsu, who didn't know what was going on, asked curiously. She carefully looked at the two people who were confronting each other, then whispered, Are you guys fighting? I don't think it's good to fight. This made the originally angry Chihaya Fukuyama suddenly lose her spirit. She let go of Mo Li's collar with an ugly expression, lowered her arms, and then walked to her room in a daze. My landlord and I are of the same mind. Emoli looked at the other person's wobbly back and suddenly said, My landlord is still alive, which means that my landlord is fine. Chihaya Fukuyama turned around in surprise. In other words, if Su Xinxing died, Emoli would also die? But even in this situation, she still wanted to send the two of them back to Earth. It seemed that this little girl was not as cold-blooded as she thought. Wait a minute, what happened? Seeing their somewhat gloomy expressions, Songyu couldn't help but ask. It's fine. If it's that Mr. Su, maybe he'll suddenly open the door, then smile and say sorry. It took me a lot of time to clean up the trash. Asahi Sakura Kanji, who had been silent, forced herself to speak. Yeah, if it's that person, now, Chihaya Fukuyama could only force herself to believe this. However, at this moment, there was a roar that sounded like an explosion outside the entire Sakura apartment. This sound was so familiar. It was like an enlarged version of the previous explosion that bombarded Mo Li's barrier. So what happened? Songyu tried to cover Chiketsu's ears as she asked loudly. There's a problem. Emoli sighed, that guy is coming. As soon as he finished speaking, the second wave of explosion hit. The glass products in the entire Sakura apartment even made a buzzing sound because of this loud explosion. Fortunately, the protection of the Holy Land outside Sakura apartment was personally set up by Su Xinxing, and it was very strong. It was not as easy to break as the fake barrier woven by Jasmine. who had not yet fully recovered and released her seal. Sister Songyu? Chiketsu, who was curled up in Songyu's arms, looked a little scared. It's okay, it's just a typhoon. Although Songyu herself didn't know what happened, she still tried to cheer up. She hugged Chiketsu and said to the little girl, "It'll be over soon." No, if this continues, the barrier outside won't be able to hold on. On the other side of the living room, the earth lowly had already dragged her sickly body out. But thinking about it, if he could still sleep in such a situation, how great would it be? However, after only one day, her body seemed to have deteriorated to a rather bad state. She didn't know whether it was the continuous deterioration of the spiritual veins or the influence of the scarlet moon in the sky. Teacher, Chihaya Fukuyama bowed respectfully to her, but he couldn't hide the worry on his face. Do you have any ideas about the current situation? If you can draw out all of your power, it might be of some use. After all, your war god's divinity isn't low, but now you don't have that much time to familiarize yourself with it. The earth lowly also felt that the current situation was very troublesome. A god's grasp of their own divinity almost always required a considerable amount of time to familiarize themselves with it. It could be said that it was a painstaking effort, and there was no way to reach the heavens in a single bound. Don't worry, leave it to me. At this time, Emily suddenly spoke up. Her forehead was already beginning to sweat. Clearly, the barrier of the Holy Land was able to withstand the attack from the outside world, and it wasn't just because the barrier was sturdier. Her voice sounded a little tired, and it made one's heart ache. Just hold on a little longer. Mr. Landlord will definitely come. Chapter 292. When Chang Xiaoxian jumped into the mirror, she felt as if she had passed through a thin film of soap bubbles. After about 28 seconds of weightlessness, she felt as if she had bumped into another soap bubble. Your Highness! A surprised voice rang in her ears. Chang Xiaoxian opened her eyes and saw Phoebe beside her, who was full of excitement. I knew you wouldn't leave the moon like this. You must have come down to investigate the human world so that we can have a better life in the Arcana realm. Even so, you must have been paying close attention to the situation on the moon all the time. That's why you came back so quickly. Chang Xiaoxian was a little embarrassed by Phoebe's trust. She came down to the Arcana realm purely to have fun, because there was no fun on the moon. If it weren't for the strange changes in the Arcana realm that could be seen even on Earth, she probably wouldn't have known that something had happened on the moon. However, she couldn't just tell the truth. She also felt that it was inappropriate for her to shamelessly accept Phoebe's trust. Fortunately, it didn't take long for her to be embarrassed. Artemis and Hecate also teleported over from the mirror. For a while, she didn't need to say anything to smooth things over. This is so embarrassing. I told you to keep an eye on the Arcana realm before I left, but you didn't do anything when something so big happened. However, Hecate couldn't stand the two goddesses' behavior and started to stir up trouble. Because everything happened so suddenly, it's like a nightmare. Phoebe cried and covered her cheeks as if she was trying to wake herself up from a nightmare. The moon rabbits were maintaining the front line, but because of this, the operation of the moon god's palace was basically suspended. It will take some time for it to recover. Unlike Phoebe, who was useless except for her divine powers, Luna was much calmer. Fortunately, Wu Gang's sons, who were the biggest threat to the moon god's palace, have all committed suicide. Otherwise, the moon god's palace would have fallen. After a pause, she continued. Also, when the battle was in full swing, we sent a moon rabbit to break out of the encirclement. We plan to send her to the Arcana realm to ask for help, but I can't contact her now. I don't know if she's dead or successfully descended. That's not urgent. If she's dead, we'll find out when we clean up the battlefield. Artemis, who was standing on Chang Xiaoxian's shoulder, said in a deep voice, if she's already descended, we'll contact her when everything is over. I think there's something more important before us. The more important matter she was referring to was undoubtedly the scarlet beam of light. Even though the beam of light was a certain distance away from the moon god's palace, the goddesses felt an inexplicable sense of fear and trepidation in their hearts when they looked in that direction. It was as if they had seen something of a level far beyond them. By the way, Artemis, what's with that ridiculous look on your face? Luna glanced sideways at Artemis, who was the goddess of the waning moon. Artemis still maintained the appearance of one Li. Humph, ridiculous? That's because you don't know the benefits of this form. Artemis snorted. What benefits? Phoebe asked curiously. Perhaps it was because Chang Xiaoxian had returned. She felt that she had found her backbone and relaxed. Of course, I can bathe with the princess. Artemis answered without hesitation. Phoebe, what? That's really enviable. Ahem, I'm jealous. Luna, you don't have any intention of hiding your perverted desires at all. Phoebe, shut up. How would a frigid person like you understand my love for the princess? Listening to the argument between the goddesses, as well as Hecate's displeased muttering. Damn it, the red leopard is too big for the bathtub. Chang Xiaoxian could not help but feel like crying, but no tears would come out. I don't want this kind of twisted love. In short, putting aside the sexual fetishes of the four goddesses, the most important thing was the current situation in the Guanghan secret realm. Because of the scarlet beam of light, the exposure of the inner moon was almost certain. Although the various governments on Earth spontaneously defended the sudden appearance of the scarlet moon in order to prevent panic, they should have secretly begun to explore and research the inner moon. To be honest, this wasn't a good thing for the Guanghan secret realm located in the inner moon. After all of Wu Gang's children were wiped out, the moon rabbits, which had the largest population in the Guanghan secret realm, had only about 2,000 of them. Although they were all superhumans compared to ordinary people on Earth, with a population of 7 billion, the number of extraordinary beings that humans actually had was probably no less than the number of moon rabbits. If there was a conflict, the Guanghan secret realm would definitely be the one to suffer. Moreover, the fear of the unknown caused by other intelligent creatures was a common trait among humans. That was why there were so many Hollywood movies about alien invasions. Even if most humans had a good impression of their neighbors on the inner moon, as long as there were enough people who were hostile to them, the relationship between the two sides would still be quite tense. Therefore, before humans completely figured out the existence of the Guanghan secret realm, the most important thing right now was to resolve the current situation and return the inner moon to the shadow of the moon. That's why I plan to take Laurel and personally go to the beam of light. Chang Xiaoxian said with a serious expression. However, the four goddesses strongly objected. Absolutely not. Artemis slapped the girl's cheek with his meaty paw. That's too dangerous, Your Highness. I think so too. Just let Phoebe go in your place, Luna said expressionlessly. That's right, let me go in your place. Phoebe had just chimed in when she suddenly realized what Luna had said and couldn't help but cry out in surprise. That's true. Phoebe may be useless, but she's a goddess. Even as a useless person, she's immune to most worldly injuries. And because she's useless, even if something happens to her there, the Moon God's Palace's combat ability won't be affected. Hecate nodded in understanding. What's with that? This is a good idea, look. I'm not a goddess who's in charge of combat. I'll die. I'll definitely die if I go there. Phoebe was about to cry. And you called me useless 3 times. That's too much. Even though I'm indeed useless. She actually admitted it herself. Chang Xiaoxian didn't know whether to laugh or cry at this group of clowns. Chapter 293. Although the 4 moon goddesses tried their best to stop her, Chang Xiaoxian still decided to go there personally. The reason was simple. She was the strongest fighter in the Moon God Palace, or rather, in the entire Guanghan secret realm. Even though she was not as strong as her mother, Chang'e, who was able to split open the celestial realm while pregnant, asked the West Queen Mother for the elixir of immortality, and snatched the immortal Laurel with her own strength. She returned to the mortal world without being shackled by the rules of the celestial realm. But at least she had considerable strength. Her mother was an exception among exceptions. Back when she returned to the mortal world from the immortal realm, if she hadn't discovered that a day in heaven was a year on earth, and that He had remarried after waiting bitterly for her for over 30 years without success, then with Chang'e's intervention, human history would have been rewritten. Then, Chang-Yi swallowed the elixir of immortality and flew to the moon before the Earth's space industry started. She found the hidden moon on the other side of the moon and beat the other moon goddesses. Then, she subdued Wu Gang and made him plant the laurel seed. At the same time, she educated the moon rabbits and made them improve in various aspects. The moon rabbits also swore to serve Chang-Yi for generations to come. But after swallowing the elixir of immortality, Chang-Yi's body was forever frozen in time. After getting tired of the long life, she suddenly wanted to give birth to her child, who was also frozen in the embryonic state like her. So, Chang-Yi cultivated the elixir of immortality in reverse and sealed all the elixir of immortality in her child. After giving birth to Chang Shaoxian, she passed away due to the exhaustion of all her vitality. But to this day, the elixir of immortality was still sealed in Chang Shaoxian's body. At the same time, the girl also inherited her mother's bloodline, beauty, and strength. In addition, she could use the power of the immortal laurel, so she was basically invincible in the Guanghan secret realm. It was precisely because of this that she felt that instead of letting the rabbits go there one after another and not necessarily being able to find any useful information, it would be faster for her to go there herself. Anyway, even if she suffered a fatal injury, she could be healed by the catalyst elixir, and the side effect was that her appearance would be fixed forever. Although her current body had not grown to the extent that she was most satisfied with, mainly referring to the chest area, it had already reached an acceptable level. Due to the urgency of time, the 4 moon goddesses, except for Phoebe and Luna, decided to stay at home. The rest of them followed the Chang Shaoxian to go to the Light Pillar. The place where the Light Pillar was located was the palace that had been abandoned due to the attack of Wu Gang's son. At this time, the palace was bathed in a scarlet light. It was overflowing with a strange sense of distortion. Without any hesitation, Chang Shaoxian walked in with a long wooden staff in her hand. The wooden staff was much taller than the girl. There were forks in the middle, and there were many branches at the top. At first glance, they even looked like sharp and slender antlers. Then Artemis and Hecate looked at each other and walked in together. Although the moon rabbits were guarding the place, they did not go in together because they knew that if they encountered anything inside, they would not be able to help the moon goddesses because of the huge gap between them and the moon goddesses. Instead, they would simply be a burden. After entering the abandoned palace, the Chang Shaoxian showed a look of surprise. The inside of the palace seemed to be connected to another space. Although he did not take a closer look, the vast sky with blood-red meteors streaking across it from time to time, and the barren, scorching and dry land where not even a blade of grass grew. It did not look like it was on the moon at all. There was no celestial body like the sun in the sky, but it was as bright as day. The ground was covered with gullies that were deeper and wider than the Yarlung Zambwa Canyon. And, judging from the gravel on both sides, the gullies were probably not naturally formed. The reason why they did not take a closer look was that the Chang Shaoxian and the moon goddesses did not have the luxury of time to take a closer look. As soon as they entered the palace, a terrible monster stared at them. It was a figure that would only appear in nightmares. It was indescribably terrifying, and even just looking at it made them feel uncomfortable. It was more than 20 meters tall and looked like a combination of insects, sea creatures, and rotten reptiles. It also looked like an amalgamation of countless disgusting pieces of meat. Its body was covered with eyes, or compound eyes. Several parts of its body had a mouth full of sharp teeth that opened like flower petals. There was also a long, sharp tongue full of sharp teeth that resembled human teeth. To be honest, even the Chang Shaoxian was frightened by the monster's appearance that gave her goosebumps. But then, she realized that this monster did not only have a terrible appearance. Even if it was just its limbs or tentacles, because it was impossible to tell if there were bones in its limbs, a normal attack could easily set off a wind that was more than level 12. It could easily peel off the surface of the ground and blow at hundreds of meters high. If one was hit by such an attack, even an immortal would be injured. Fortunately, both the Chang Shaoxian and the 2 moon goddesses who followed her were the more agile type. They could easily avoid the monster's attack that was not very fast. But the aftermath of the attack made them suffer unspeakably. Their petite bodies didn't have much mass. Although the wind couldn't harm them, it could easily blow them into the air. It was difficult to even stabilize their bodies on the ground. Once they were in the air, it would be really bad. Of course, this was not the only problem. She originally thought that it was just an ordinary physical attack, but after the Chang Shaoxian tried to block it once, she found that she seemed to have underestimated the monster. That kind of attack was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. Once one was hit by the monster's attack, in addition to causing physical damage, the target's own material and energy structure would be impacted. Perhaps even the hardest metal would be instantly shattered into pieces under such an attack. Not only that, whether it was magic, qigong, or even physical attacks, they had no effect on the monster at all. It was as if it was born immune to all damage in this world. It was even more incredible than the divinity of the four moon goddesses. After dodging the monster's direct attack again, the Chang Shaoxian carefully thought about what kind of damage it would cause to the outside world if it escaped. Finally, she realized that what she was facing now was not a simple monster, but a world-destroying monster that could easily destroy the entire moon. No, even the entire Earth. Chapter 294. After fighting for a while, the three of them were more or less injured. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before they all died here. Hecate, help me hold it back for a while. The Chang Shaoxian, who already knew what kind of enemy they were fighting, made up her mind and shouted loudly. After that, she stopped her useless attacks on the monster. Instead, she slammed the wooden staff into the ground. The sharp wooden staff didn't pierce into the ground. Instead, it stopped when it was about to touch the ground. Then, a huge formation spread out under the girl's feet and began to gather the brilliance of the moon outside. If they were on the moon, this move could be completed in an instant. However, because they were in a different space, they needed some time to prepare. The monster probably noticed the huge formation. It swung its claws at Hecate, who was trying to harass it, and rushed toward the Chang Shaoxian. I won't let you disturb Her Highness. Artemis somersaulted in the air and turned back into a human. The silver longbow in his hand was already fully drawn. Countless light spots gathered into a moon arrow. As the waning moon goddess shouted, it turned into a silver stream of light and shot toward the monster. The arrow easily pierced through the monster's body. However, it didn't cause any destructive damage to the monster. At most, it only made its movements pause for a moment. That was all. However, it was enough. Because they weren't far from the moon, the Chang Shaoxian quickly gathered enough moon essence. Amidst the strange and filthy roar of the monster, she jumped up lightly. With her extraordinary agility, she stabbed the wooden staff into the monster's back. The monster roared angrily again. This roar was so terrifying that it even affected the movements of the moon goddesses. Even the Chang Shaoxian was stunned for a moment. However, she had already achieved her goal. The bare wooden staff suddenly emitted a dazzling brilliance, and the monster felt as though it was being crushed by a mountain. Its dozens of legs were unable to support it, and its huge body collapsed to the ground with a loud bang. This scene was actually a little comical. To the mountain-sized monster, the wooden staff was like a wooden spike as thick as a strand of hair, completely disproportionate to its size. However, it was precisely this tiny wooden staff that was like 3 mountains and 5 peaks. No, even real mountains might not be able to suppress this monster that could annihilate a planet or even a world. The power of that smooth wooden staff was far above that. Chang Shaoxian was not surprised, because that was the original form of the undying laurel, one of the 10 legendary primordial spiritual roots. The one in the Guanghan secret realm was the 2nd-generation laurel that Wu Gang had planted. As the only innate spiritual root in the mortal world, the divinity of the immortal laurel far exceeded the sum of all the gods left on Earth in this era. In addition, the Chang Shaoxian used the moon and the power left in her by her mother. It was reasonable for her to be able to exert such power. Moreover, the The Chang Shaoxian did not use the undying laurel just to suppress the other party. She put her palms together, concentrated her divine thoughts, and instantly connected with the undying laurel. The result of this was that in the eyes of Artemis and the others, the undying laurel, which was originally just a bare staff, began to devour the flesh and blood of the monster below, while it slowly stretched out, and some branches even grew leaves. Cough! During this period, the monster naturally struggled to resist. Even with the support of the undying laurel, the divine thoughts still suffered serious injuries from the other party's attack. Not only did it cough out blood clots, but even tears of blood flowed out of its eyes. However, in exchange for this, the monster became weaker and weaker. In the end, its breath of life was completely devoured by the undying laurel, and it became a huge mummy. Your Highness, after doing all this, Chang Shaoxian almost lost consciousness and fell to the ground. Fortunately, Artemis, who was next to her, saw that the situation was not good and immediately supported her. It's really too dangerous, Chang Shaoxian smiled weakly. The undying laurel almost reached its limit. This monster is really too powerful. Hee, but it was still defeated by your Highness. You are indeed that person's child. Well done. Artemis smiled gently and touched the Chang Shaoxian's head, making the latter shy and happy. Ho-ho-ho! Hecate, it seems that I won this time. Don't blame me for running away. Seeing the Chang Shaoxian's expression, Artemis proudly showed off to the other moon goddess. But Hecate, who would usually refute a few words, was stunned at this time and did not say a word. Hecate, Chang Shaoxian called her strangely. The moon goddess's face was distorted with disbelief, and she slowly raised her finger and pointed into the distance. Chang Shaoxian and Artemis looked in the direction of her finger, puzzled, and they saw the same monster as the one just now. There were more than 200 of them. At this moment, they were slowly surrounding them. What kind of nightmare is this? Chang Shaoxian felt a chill rising from the soles of her feet to the top of her head. A feeling of despair enveloped her, making her hands and feet cold, and she could not even move. Even though she was Chang Yi's posthumous child, had part of Chang's power, and was the owner of the undying laurel, one of the top 10 innate spiritual roots, and was the princess of the Moon God Palace, she was actually just a child 100 years old, in the eyes of immortals. The most intense battle she had experienced was when she was mistakenly mistaken for a demon and fought by a cultivator when she was wandering on Earth. She did not even use the power of the moon goddess, let alone the undying laurel. Now, after using all her trump cards, she finally killed a monster with great difficulty, but she did not expect there to be so many of these monsters. Was she going to die here? No. If she used the elixir of immortality, but would the elixir of immortality really work on the strange attacks of these monsters? Chang Shaoxian's chaotic thoughts made her body stiff, and her brain was like paste. She did not know what to do. Artemis, take the princess and run to Earth. I'll stay here and try to delay them. Fortunately, the oldest moon goddess, Hecate, was still calm. She gritted her teeth and said to Artemis, there was no doubt that she was ready to sacrifice herself. When fighting with such a monster, even if there was only one, she had to be mentally prepared to die, not to mention that there were so many enemies. Hearing this, Chang Shaoxian was shocked. She immediately struggled up, trying to say something, but at this moment, the monsters that were running toward them suddenly exploded and turned into clouds of blood mist. If that's the case, this place should be cleaned up. A man's voice came from afar. Senior, if I'm not mistaken, there's a total of 9,998 of them. One is missing. Following that, a female voice that Chang Shaoxian found to be slightly familiar sounded. What? There's a fish that slipped through the net? How troublesome. Wait, Xingyan, look over there. It seems that one of them has been turned into a specimen. Really? Other than Senior, there's actually someone who can defeat such a monster? As the voices gradually approached, 3 figures gradually appeared in Chang Shaoxian's line of sight. One was a young man wearing a cheap jacket, carrying a sword on his shoulder and a moon rabbit in his other hand. The other was a short girl, carrying a patched brown vintage travel bag. The last person Chang Xiaoxian had some impression of. It seemed to be Qin Xingyan, a female student from Jiangjin University who occasionally appeared by Song Yu's side. Chapter 295. I see. You're actually the Princess of the Moon. As a student of Jiangjin University, Su Xinxing naturally recognized Chang Xiaoxian, but the other party did not recognize him. After listening to Chang Xiaoxian's explanation of the ins and outs of the matter, Su Xinxing nodded solemnly, pretending to be wise and knowledgeable. First of all, according to Ying's information, those strange monsters seemed to be derivatives of the UK. Judging from the appearance of the other party with slight insect characteristics, it was likely that the culprit behind the appearance of these monsters was the main reason why Ying tracked them to this world. UK 004, the maggot that eats the world. However, after Ying described the other party's appearance, Su Xinxing found that this guy seemed to have been trampled to death by him a few days ago. Well, at least this could explain why the other party hated him so much. In short, each of these monsters derived from UK 004 had the destructive power to destroy a world. Moreover, they did not destroy through information distortion like the UK, but through physical destruction. The advantage of this method was that there was no information distortion and it would not attract the attention of the Space Administration. The disadvantage was that it would take hundreds of millions of time. In short, in order to prevent them from escaping and destroying the Earth nearby, Su Xinxing could only shield the entrance with a holy land. Then, together with Qin Xingyan and the others, they killed a total of 9,999 monsters one by one. The whole process took about an hour. Although she had long known that Su Xinxing was unexpectedly strong, and that even UK 002 herself was no match for him. After seeing him easily defeat nearly 10,000 world-destroying monsters, Ying finally understood that Su Xinxing was indeed not an ordinary UK. This was because from the beginning to the end, his battle had not caused any information distortion. However, there was no way to explain his extraordinary strength by saying that it was accidentally born. It was absolutely impossible for a world of this level to give birth to a being of Su Xinxing's level, just like how a Tyrannosaurus Rex would never hatch in an egg. Other things aside, the holy sword in Su Xinxing's hand alone had more information than the total information of this world, excluding Su Xinxing and Mo Li by many times. Even the main control computer of the Violet could not measure the exact value. Then, a certain malicious consciousness secretly eroded the minds of the children of Wu Gang in the Guanghan secret realm hundreds of years ago. Its purpose was unknown because that consciousness had been distorted by the resentment of UK 004, and its purpose had fundamentally changed from the beginning. Because the will of the UK could change the direction of the world and make accidental development inevitable. Under the guidance of UK 004, Su Xinxing and the others landed on the moon, broke into the trap, and fought with the monsters that had been distorted by the information distortion of the maggots that gnawed the world. However, judging from what the mysterious consciousness had done and the fact that it had secretly nurtured those monsters, it was likely that the other party wasn't a good person either. In short, the crisis of the moon was solved. After the group walked out of the light beam, the scarlet light that shrouded the Guanghan secret realm gradually faded. After a while, when the power of the immortal laurel recovered, it could hide the moon on the other side of the moon, in the shadow of the world. In addition, as soon as they walked out of the light beam, Su Xinxing frowned and looked up in the direction of the earth. He naturally felt the protection of the Holy Land that was repeatedly activated outside Sakura's apartment. That fellow Jasmine, could it be that she's slacking off again? No, it's probably because the effects of the deep seal haven't faded yet. He sighed, then casually tossed his sacred sword as though it was a javelin. The holy sword's edge suddenly cut through space and disappeared into the void. The next moment, it had passed through the void and directly inserted into the door of Sakura's apartment. As a result, the powerful consciousness that was filled with malice did not even have the time to react before it was slain by the sword and completely annihilated. Ah, I forgot to ask where that thing's consciousness came from. After doing this, Su Xinxing rubbed his forehead with some regret. Although that thing was contaminated by UK-004, there should still be some residual information. But now, there was no use in regretting. There was nothing special about what happened after that. After learning that Su Xinxing and his group came to the moon to find the 5-color stone to fill the spirit veins, the Chang Shaoxian asked the moon rabbits to dig up a piece of soil under the 2nd-generation laurel and give it to them. Although it was not the 5-color stone, it was still the legendary spiritual soil, living soil. Because it helped you the Great to control the flood, the living soil itself had the symbolic meaning of filling and blocking. Plus, it could be regenerated infinitely. No matter how big the gap was, there was no problem. It could be considered an emergency item. In return, Su Xinxing asked Ing to send some Jinkala, Ing, UK-084 plant growth stimulant, to the moon rabbits, which could also solve the disease of the 2nd-generation laurel that was about to wither. Then the group returned to Earth through the Chang Shaoxian's mirror. After retrieving the van that they almost forgot from the quarry, they finally returned to Sakura's apartment. Although the living soil's effect was not as obvious as the 5-color stone, it was still useful. It didn't take long for the sickly Earth Lowly to become lively again. She could even compete with Emoli for the computer. Not long after driving away the Earth Lowly, who was freeloading on them, Ing also said goodbye to Su Xinxing. I originally came here to capture UK-004. Now that it has been killed by you, both physically and mentally, there's no point for me to continue to stay here. The girl said, although I'm curious about the fact that you can kill UK-004, my current task is not to study this. In addition, during the time I left the Space Administration, the technology of the Space Administration seems to have some new developments, so I plan to go back and upgrade the Violet first. If there's a chance, I should come back again. Su Xinxing originally wanted her to leave the maid outfit, but after seeing the girl's calm eyes, he could only say, oh, you actually let her leave just like that. Qin Xingyin looked a little surprised when he saw Su Xinxing coming back alone. What else? Su Xinxing raised his eyebrows. I thought you would try harder to make her a new resident of Sakura's apartment. The girl sighed. Isn't this the same trick in the past? Because she looks like she doesn't have money. Su Xinxing frowned. The point is, whether it's money from an alien planet or another world, I can't use it here. Is that the point? The girl, who was the only tenant paying the rent, smiled bitterly. A few days later, the long-awaited celebration of Jiangjin University that Su Xinxing had been waiting for began. Chapter 296. It was a strange world. Mountains of candies, puffs, and cookies could be seen everywhere. The sky was not the usual azure blue, but a suspicious pink color that gave people a sense of strawberry cream sweetness. Donuts and multi-layer cakes that were as large as houses were also interspersed among them. In addition to the flowing rivers of milk, dams made of chocolate, and many other sweets, this world was as incredible as a dream. In this desolate world of desserts, a petite figure suddenly appeared, shuttling through the sweets buildings. It was a girl of about 17 or 18 years old. She was wearing a pointed sorcerer's hat, and her long, chestnut-colored hair flowed out mischievously from the hat. It bounced with her movements, and she looked very valiant. She was wearing a pale pink princess dress with white tassels, high-heeled leather boots, and held a pink cane in her hand. A pair of rainbow-colored light wings were faintly discernible on her back. Logically speaking, whether it was the cumbersome princess dress or the high-heeled leather boots, they were not suitable for movement. However, she was running and jumping in this world of sweets with an extremely unreasonable degree of agility and dexterity. If one looked closely, they would find that she seemed to be chasing a fist-sized, translucent, white ball of light that was emitting a clear light. If you don't hurry up, that thing is going to escape. The sorcerer's hat on her head suddenly shook, and a childlike voice came from the folds of the hat, which at first glance could be mistaken for a mouth. I know. I'm working on it. The girl waved the pink cane in her hand. As the huge gem at the front of the cane shone, The light wings on the girl's back increased to 3 pairs at the same time, increasing her speed by leaps and bounds. There were even white shock waves around her body that only appeared when she was about to break through the sound barrier. Even if she was just running, the airflow brought about by the shock waves could sweep up the scattered sweets around her and send them flying for more than 10 meters. However, compared to the speed of the ball of light, the girl's speed was still slightly slower. "It's not enough. I need to be faster." Even though it looked like she was having a hard time, the girl's eyes revealed an unyielding spirit. She waved the cane in her hand, and 2 pairs of white and cute little wings appeared on her boots. She stomped on the ground made of wafer biscuits, causing the ground to be destroyed by the force of her stomp. At the same time, her speed increased again. Finally, she successfully broke through the sound barrier and reached the level of supersonic speed. In an instant, the white shockwave and the things that were swept up by the airflow she stirred up were all left behind her. "Partner, you're overexerting yourself. If this continues, the magic device will break." There was no rope tied to it, and the girl didn't have any free hand to hold it down. But in this supersonic movement, the pointy sorcerer's hat was still firmly on her head. But from the tone of the sorcerer's voice, it seemed that it wasn't easy in this state. It wasn't easy to defeat all the nightmares. How can I let the holy ring disappear for no reason? Theoretically speaking, humans would not be able to breathe at supersonic speeds without oxygen masks or the like. However, some kind of supernatural power allowed the girl to ignore this restriction, and she could even speak. A holy ring that can fulfill wishes. That's the only hope to revive Ling and the others. For this, it doesn't matter even if I break my legs. Even if I have to crawl, I must get it. Help me, Sereno. Ah, why is my partner always such a reckless person? I don't care what happens next. The sorcerer's hat shouted in a helpless tone. Then, the girl's body began to emit an enchanting and gorgeous aurora. However, for some reason, this beautiful radiance made people think of a slowly burning candle. If someone with dynamic vision could see the girl's figure, they would realize that it was not an illusion. Sparkling pure white quartz sand was slowly falling from the girl's body. To be precise, the girl's body was slowly turning into quartz sand. However, it was this self-harming action that allowed the girl's speed to increase again, giving her a chance to grab the white ball of light. However, just as she was about to grab the ball of light, the world was opened. It was as if she had passed through an invisible door. The surrounding environment made of deserts disappeared and was replaced by a clear blue sky, as well as the many tall buildings below. What? Because this change was too sudden, the girl was stunned and the ball of light was blown away by the wind, missing her by a hair's breadth. The barrier created by the holy ring has disappeared. Wait, why is the magic content in the air so low? No, this place is... The sorcerer's hat's voice came from her head, but the exhaustion that came from the depths of her soul caused the girl to fall into a half-awake state. Wait, are you kidding me? We're at least 3,000 meters above the ground. Don't fall asleep. We have to at least construct a basic defensive tactic, otherwise we'll fall. Her consciousness was cut off. Just a little bit more. This was the last word that flashed through the girl's mind before she lost consciousness. Cui Yingying was moving towards Jiangjin University, preparing to visit Jiangjin University's anniversary celebration. To be precise, she was dragged by her close friend to visit the school's anniversary celebration. Molly seemed to have been dragged away by her landlord to work as a laborer. Probably because they were friends, and since his vacation was ruined, he naturally couldn't let Cui Yingying go alone, so he invited Cui Yingying to go with him. However, the girl was also curious about Jiangjin University's anniversary celebration, so she didn't reject it. Because the laces of her sneakers were loose, the girl ran to the side of the road to tie them, but a shiny object in the grass attracted her attention. She walked over to take a look and found that it was a bright silver ring. There were many patterns on the ring, but no gems could be seen. It gave off a simple feeling, but it also had a kind of simple beauty. Thinking that she should hand over the things she picked up to the police or teachers, The girl wanted to move to the nearby police station, but before she could take a few steps, she was caught by Emily, who came to pick her up, or rather, detain her. "Stop playing. The landlord is about to start." Wait a minute. At least let me tie my shoelaces. The girl subconsciously put the ring in her pocket, and her sorrowful cries resounded through the autumn sky. Chapter 297. So this kind of thing actually happened half an hour before the opening ceremony of Jiangjin University. Xiao Jingyi sat in a coffee shop that was still being prepared. Thanks to his identity as a police officer, he was able to enter the university at this time and talk to Su Xinxing in a manner similar to an interview. He didn't have to worry about being disturbed by other students. After listening to Su Xinxing's general description of what had happened, the veins on his temples throbbed. He flipped the table over, revealing the desk that was pieced together underneath. He said angrily, "So the Crimson Moon incident that caused me to have to deal with documents for 4 hours and even have to work overtime without pay was also caused by you bastards. Don't mess around. I'm also a victim, okay?" Su Xinxing said calmly as he dug his ears. "The entire mysterious world of the Celestial Empire is in chaos, okay? That Crimson Moon directly messed up the astrological chart created by the Imperial astronomer. 70% of the cultivators who practice astrological techniques are almost suffering from Qigong deviation because their Tao heart was shaken. Do you know how people die from Qigong deviation? Bang, pa-la-la-la-la." Xiao Jingyi made a gesture of an explosion. "Isn't there still 30%? Su Xinxing retorted. "That 30% has already exploded. Okay." Xiao Jingyi rubbed his temples, looking both physically and mentally exhausted. F***CK. The scenes of those Qigong deviation deaths are too horrifying. It's so troublesome to deal with the aftermath. Just Jiangjin alone has already exploded 7 times, and the scene of each death is like a postmodern art piece with large intestines all over the ground. Now the streets have already begun to spread rumors of a perverted serial bomber. Do you want a drink to calm down?" Su Xinxing handed him a colorless and transparent drink. "Oh, thank you." Cough, 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 cough. "What the hell is this?" Xiao Jingyi took a sip and spat it out from his nose. "Water of life," Su Xinxing replied seriously. "Water of life, my ass. This is medical alcohol." Xiao Jingyi's mouth twitched. "No, you think too much," Su Xinxing said seriously. "I can't believe I actually believe that you had good intentions. I've been too busy lately," Xiao Jingyi sighed helplessly. "Because the alcohol content of medical alcohol is not as high as this one." Su Xinxing put a bottle of Polish distilled vodka, 96% alcohol content, by the way, 75% for medical purposes, on the table. "Isn't this even worse?" Although it wasn't that he didn't drink at all, Xiao Jingyi's face was already turning red. Fortunately, he only took a sip, and most of it went out through his nose, so he didn't pass out on the spot. "Speaking of which, where did you get this stuff? I remember that the Celestial Empire can import bars with a high alcohol content. I don't know." It was only at times like this that Xiao Zhengyi missed the days when the former director of the Super Administrative Office, Su Feng, was still there. Damn, at least he didn't have to take the blame back then. In short, now that the Crimson Moon incident was more or less understood, there was no point in continuing to stay here. So, he was about to get up and leave, but at this time, a girl in a maid uniform with bunny ears came over with a drink with a blushing face. "Well, it's almost time to open for business. You really have a bad taste." Xiao Jingyi looked at the girl and felt that the maid, uniform aside, the rabbit ears were really good. He couldn't tell that they were fake at all. So, he gave a thumbs up. "Great." Su Xinxing didn't explain much and smiled in a way that all men understood. Suddenly, there was a new tacit understanding between the two of them. "So, our master, how long do you plan to stay here?" "Hey, Xiaoqing, when did you come here?" Xiao Jingyi's face was pale. He turned his head and looked at the female police officer who had appeared out of nowhere. Fang Xiaoqing gave him a thumbs up. "Probably when you said great. It was really the worst time to come. Goodbye, I won't see you out." Su Xinxing smiled at Xiao Jingyi again. "Su Xinxing, you set me up." Chapter 298. The reason why there was a rabbit-eared maid in Su Xinxing's class was naturally not because Su Xinxing had awakened some strange sexual fetish. Although I don't know if everyone still remembers, but when our protagonist was on the moon, he once scared a moon rabbit until she fainted and carried her to complete the elimination of the aberrated monsters. After the Crimson Moon's mutation, Song Yu and Qin Xingyin suddenly found that their class had to prepare for the school anniversary celebration, so they had to cancel the appointment. Therefore, the number of people in the maid cafe rapidly decreased, and all of them were young. Even if they changed the name to Lolicon Cafe, no one would raise any objections. Well, in fact, there were still two girls from Japan, Chihaya Fukuyama and Asahi Sakura Kanji, who could barely be the backbone. After Chang Xiaoxian heard about this, they simply sent the rabbit that was scared unconscious by Su Xinxing over. And because of Ying's departure, Su Xinxing's house had an extra maid dress, so this matter was settled, of course. There were still some differences between Ying's short figure and the slender figure of the moon rabbit called Huatan. The maid's dress, which was originally considered a mid-length dress for Ying, became a short skirt for Huatan. The lines of her upper body were also very clear because of the tighter clothes. Even though she was fully clothed, she unexpectedly gave off a kind of erotic feeling. Fortunately, the difference in the chest between the two was not big, otherwise the clothes would probably not be able to fit. Speaking of which, the girls around Su Xinxing, except for Songyu, beautiful breasts, and Chihaya Fukuyama, normal breasts, all of them seemed to have flat breasts. Actually, you don't have to be so secretive. This dress is quite suitable. Su Xinxing said to a Watan from the bottom of his heart. It's not suitable. The girl was so angry that her rabbit ears stood straight. While holding the tray with one hand, the other hand was trying to pull the hem of the dress, as if trying to cover more of her skin. Little did she know that this kind of shy feeling could stimulate the sadistic desire in the hearts of ordinary men. Landlord, what are you thinking? Just as Su Xinxing was about to say something to tease him, Mo Li's voice came from behind him. It's nothing. I'm just curious about how you look like in maid outfits. As he spoke, Su Xinxing turned around. In the end, he found a young girl in a maid uniform holding a cup of steaming hot coffee. She stood on tiptoe as if she was going to pass the coffee to him. He didn't know what kind of agreement the group of tenants had reached. In short, a few days after the end of the Bloody Moon incident, Songyu had bought the maid outfits, but no one was willing to wear them for him, which made him beat his chest and stamp his feet, but he was also looking forward to it. And from the looks of it today, his expectations were not let down. The girl's appearance made him fall into a trance. Her actions and expression overlapped with a certain figure from 3 years ago. She gave him a faint, sweet smile. Landlord, probably feeling Su Xinxing's heart wavering, Mo Li tilted his head and called out cutely. Sorry. Su Xinxing took the coffee from Mo Li's hand. The temperature of the coffee passed through the cup and warmed his palm. It's warm. Yes, it's warm. Mo Li's hands gently covered Su Xinxing's cheeks. The temperature of the coffee cup was completely different from the temperature of the girl's soft palms. Even if the girl didn't say anything more, Su Xinxing understood what she meant. Mo Li was just comforting Su Xinxing in his own way. That's great, that's great. In the temporary kitchen not far away, the heads of the male classmates in the class were stacked on top of each other in front of the door. They stared at Su Xinxing with envious and jealous eyes. Shui Yingying, who came here with Mo Li, covered her small face with both hands. She seemed to be a little embarrassed by the scene, but she couldn't suppress her curiosity and peeked through the gaps between her fingers. If you're jealous, ask your parents to give birth to a younger sister. Su Xinxing's somewhat sad expression disappeared in an instant, and he boasted to those guys. Damn family planning, damn winners in life. This old man secretly thinks that even if we have a younger sister now, it's too late to raise her. We only have a younger brother. Hey, can't we have a younger brother too? For a moment, everyone was silent. While the people around them kept a distance and carefully guarded their chrysanthemums, they began to look for the guy who took advantage of the chaos to reveal that he was gay. The school anniversary booth war hadn't even started yet, but the class was already torn apart. You guys, more or less. Su Xinxing saw that the situation wasn't looking good, so he immediately shouted at them. Today is the school anniversary, and it's related to the War of Credits. Don't tell me you guys still want to come here to make up for the exam during the wonderful holidays. Even if you have credits and don't need to study, isn't it very empty without a girlfriend during the holidays? No one knew which corner this kind of voice came from. Thus, the morale of the maid cafe fell again. What do you guys know? Su Xinxing saw that the situation wasn't good, so he immediately continued to encourage them. Don't forget, today is the school anniversary. Our Jiangjin University's anniversary is very famous around here. Don't you guys know what this means? Some of the boys showed a look of understanding, but most of them still had a look of confusion. This means that there will be a lot of girls coming to visit and play. If you want to break away from the tragic situation of time without a girlfriend is equivalent to age, today is undoubtedly the best opportunity. As long as you guys can work hard and leave a good impression on the female customers here, don't be afraid that you won't have a chance to hook up with them. Thus, Su Xinxing continued to patiently and systematically guide them. The boys' eyes lit up, and they began to burn. They rushed into the kitchen, and then with the momentum of the Big Dipper fist, they began to cook all kinds of food. Oh, Cream Pave, I want to prepare 10 in one go. Weak. I'll let you see my infinite crepe creation. Ha 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 ha. Do you guys recognize this 1,000-layer durian cream, crispy crepe formation? Useless. You layman, today, I, the child of a chef family, will let you guys see the essence of spaghetti. Doesn't your family sell braised chicken and rice? Haven't you heard of the world's best food from Sha County? Is braised chicken and rice from Sha County. In short, as long as you add the poppy shell first out. When someone finally realized that no matter how good the work in the kitchen is, the customers outside can't see, Su Xinxing had already sneaked out of the classroom. 3/3, I went to watch a movie with my wife, so it's only the third watch. Speaking of which, flat breasts are fine, but breasts and beautiful breasts are prohibited words. It seems that the person who registered the bookseller's sensitive words is also one of us. In addition, there's another version of Mo Lee's illustration. It's worth mentioning that this version was originally the underwear revealing version, but under my request, it was changed to the underwear revealing version. I drew more than $1,000 and bought 2 illustrations, but I don't know which version of Mo Lee everyone likes more. For the time being, I'll call the Mo Lee illustration number 1 and the Mo Lee below number 2. I hope everyone can vote for the style of Mo Lee you like. I'll choose an artist based on your wishes to draw illustrations for the plot. Of course, because the price is quite high, there won't be too many. Chapter 299. Even though it was said to be sneaking out of the classroom, it was actually because it was not Su Xinxing's turn according to the class schedule, so it was still free time. It was now around 9 in the morning. Since it was a holiday, the Jiangjin University campus should have been sparsely populated. Even though it wasn't crowded, there were still quite a lot of people. Other than tourists and students like Su Xinxing, who were currently in a state of idleness, there were also many students who were handing out flyers for their classes. Most of them were wearing eye-catching clothes, such as puppet costumes or waiter outfits. They had abandoned their usual aloofness as university students and were trying their best to shout like hawkers. They were quite hardworking, but on the way, Su Xinxing noticed a group of people gathered together. He didn't know what they were doing. If it was in the past, he would probably choose to ignore them because he didn't want to get into trouble. After all, as a person who had experienced the hardships of the world since he was young, he naturally understood that it was better not to know about the trivial matters between ordinary people. Otherwise, other than being disgusted and filled with anger, there was nothing else he could do. He couldn't treat them as monsters and beat them half to death, right? And if he had to deal with this kind of trivial matter, what would be the point of having the police? But today was Jiangjin University's anniversary. In order to prevent any accidents from ruining the school's anniversary, plus some curiosity, he also went over to take a look. With Su Xinxing's strength, he naturally squeezed in without much effort. In the end, he found that there wasn't any commotion inside, nor was there anything interesting. It was just a girl wearing the same maid outfit as Mo, handing out flyers. Taking a closer look, she realized that the black mass of people around her was indeed all men. The girl, on the other hand, looked a little flustered. When she accidentally caught a glimpse of Su Xinxing, a stunning smile appeared on her beautiful face. Su Xinxing suddenly felt his scalp go numb, and an ominous premonition arose spontaneously. Just as he was about to leave the scene, the girl had already called out, "Benefactor." Thus, all the male gazes shot towards Su Xinxing, giving him a big headache. "Are you by Suzhin?" He muttered softly. At the same time, she walked over with a smile on her face. She took the initiative to hold Su Xinxing's hand amidst the gasps of the surrounding people. "I have something to say to my benefactor. Let's go to a place with fewer people first." Su Xinxing didn't know if it was an illusion or not, but he heard a lot of sounds that sounded like windows breaking. "So, how fragile are you guys?" The place with few people that the other party mentioned was actually just a cosplay cafe run by another class. This made Su Xinxing a little disappointed, but at the same time, he also felt a little helpless in his heart. "Damn it, I accidentally funded the enemy again." "That's not very kind of you," Su Xinxing said unhurriedly as he took a sip of the coffee that was served as an apology. "Didn't I already apologize? And I didn't say anything wrong. Aren't you the benefactor of me and the entire Guanghan arcane realm?" Chang Xiaoxian also sighed. "It's just that even I didn't expect that to happen. Maybe it's because I haven't fully recovered from the battle a few days ago, and I don't have the extra energy to restrain my charm." "Wow, you can actually say that you're charming with a calm face. Because it's the truth, right? Didn't your parents teach you what modesty is? My father died a few thousand years ago. My mother also died after giving birth to me, so I'm sorry for being so uneducated." Chang Xiaoxian rolled her eyes coquettishly. This made all the men present, except for Su Xinxing, who was immune to mental attacks, involuntarily gulp. Although many people, mainly men, were secretly peeking at them, Chang Xiaoxian didn't know what she did, but in short, the sound here seemed to be blocked. Not only could they not hear the annoying whispers outside, but the outside should also not be able to hear the content of their conversation. This made Su Xinxing breathe a sigh of relief. "By the way, is it really okay for you to leave the mess of the Guanghan arcane realm there and come to Jiangjin's school anniversary? Because it's useless to stay there." The uncrowned king of Jiangjin's school beauty Liz sighed again. After Wu Gang's son was annihilated, the workload of the Yu rabbits suddenly multiplied many times. "I'm also badly injured, so I can't do anything to help. Staying there is just a spiritual support. But for the Yu rabbits, having you as their spiritual support is a completely different matter." Su Xinxing's frivolous expression turned serious. "I think it's precisely under those circumstances that you staying there is the best encouragement for the Yu rabbits. Of course I know that. So, I left a clone there to buff the Yu rabbits. I'm here to help." A bitter smile appeared on Chang Xiaoxian's face. "Anyway, I've already let go of the management of the Guanghan arcane realm for a long time. If I give orders now, it will only add unnecessary chaos and trouble to Phoebe and the others. Forget it. This is your family's business, so I shouldn't interfere." Su Xinxing clicked his tongue in boredom. He gulped down the black coffee that was obviously brewed from a cheap bag. Because of the bitter taste, he got up and was about to leave the classroom. "Because I'm very weak." Chang Xiaoxian lowered her head and suddenly spoke up. Her voice was trembling, which made Su Xinxing stop in his tracks. "I grew up in a moon god's palace. No one is a match for me there, so I've always thought that I'm very strong. But the battle 3 days ago made me realize that I'm not strong at all. I'm really very weak. I've never experienced death so close before. At the time, I was so scared that I couldn't even move. I want to protect the moon god's palace that my mother left me and the kind and hard-working you rabbits in the Guanghan arcane realm. But without strength, I can't do anything. So I came back to Earth to find a way to become stronger. If I can't become strong enough to protect what I want to protect, how can I return to the moon god's palace as its master and look down on those who admire me from above?" Su Xinxing looked at Chang Xiaoxian, who seemed to be secretly sobbing, and scratched his head in distress. In fact, to be able to kill a mutated demon as a demigod, to be honest, was already very powerful. On Earth, excluding the two bugs, Su Xinxing and Jasmine, the number of people who could do this was definitely not more than one hand. It must be known that even for Su Xinxing, the strength of those demons could be compared to the miscellaneous soldiers he encountered in the final battle of the great demonic realm. Otherwise, even if there were nearly 10,000 of them, it would not take him an entire hour to clear them out. Chapter 300. Actually, I think you're already pretty good. Su Xinxing comforted her against his will. This caused the girl to raise her head, full of hope. Su Xinxing saw that his comforting was effective and immediately continued. You can actually kill one of those monsters. Looking at Su Xinxing, who single-handedly killed 9,998 monsters, the other hand was used to summon Hui Tan, the moon rabbit. The girl's expression immediately became very complicated. After keenly noticing this, Su Xinxing immediately corrected her. Look, compared to the minions, isn't this already a lot better? The girl's expression was dead. After making the Chang Shaoxian cry again, Su Xinxing was angrily kicked out by the crowd in the cosplay cafe. The moment he left, he seemed to have seen Artemis and Hecate fanning the flames in the crowd. It seems like those two are also worried about the Chang Shaoxian and sneak back to Earth. After standing outside for a while, speechlessly, Su Xinxing felt that he might one day become famous on the school's BBS as the scum who made the school beauty cry. However, after thinking about it for a while, he decided to just go back to his class. Bah, traitor, you still have the face to come back. In the end, he was treated extremely badly by the former four-eyed class leader. The male classmates behind him all clapped their hands to show their support for their class leader. As expected, the quality of the people here is too low. It's better if I bring my sisters back. Thus, Su Xinxing used a volume that was just loud enough for them to hear. This handsome and intelligent incarnation. Do you need anything? Thus, the other party immediately approached him with a flattering expression. The other students also rubbed their hands together and showed a flattering smile like a Japanese translator. These bastards are really realistic. Su Xinxing's shift was in the afternoon, so it was still not time for him to work. Thus, he decided to find a place to sit for a while, drink some drinks, and play with his phone to pass the time. In the end, he saw the lowly who was eating cake in the second last row by the window. Yo, you're here too. Su Xinxing, who was bored to death, greeted her. The man stared blankly at Su Xinxing for a while, then stood up silently. He didn't even have time to wipe the cream off his mouth before he turned and ran away. But it was caught by Su Xinxing quickly. Wait a minute. He grabbed the back of the man's collar. Why did you run away the moment you saw me? Isn't it because you look too scary? Qianzhao Shanshan, who had walked over with a cup of cola that seemed to have run out of energy, said unhappily. Obviously, she was very unhappy with Su Xinxing's treatment of her former teacher. How am I scary? Su Xinxing raised his eyebrows and said discontentedly. That looked scared a little kid who had come in to eat a crepe with his parents. The corners of Chihaya Fukuyama's mouth curled up slightly. Although he didn't say anything, he gave people a feeling of, you see, doesn't this explain everything? Then the girl softly comforted the child, and it didn't take long for the child to calm down. It seemed that this guy was very good at dealing with children. No wonder he had such a good relationship with Mo Li when he was in Fusang. Su Xinxing thought in his heart. I just suddenly remembered that there are some things I need to take care of. Spirit veins. That's right, the problem with the spirit veins is very serious. So now is not the time to leisurely eat cake here. The lowly who was lifted up by Su Xinxing shook her legs pitifully and tried her best to explain. Is that really the case? Su Xinxing looked suspicious. Didn't you say that the living soil is effective? Of course an outsider like you wouldn't understand. The living soil is just an emergency measure. Although it won't be a problem to last for 180 years, after a long time, the spiritual vein will still be leaked. The lowly hurriedly explained, that's why I have to go there every day to check and make sure that it's safe. That sounds reasonable. When Su Xinxing was about to let go of her, Emoli had already walked over with a large plate of sundaes. You ordered the extra large sundae, and the money is the same as before. Put it on the landlord's account. Thus, Su Xinxing pinched the lowly's cheek. Wait a minute, did you put the food on my head? By the way, during Jiangjin University's anniversary celebration, the fees were not directly paid in RMB. Instead, the tourists could exchange tokens that looked like movie tickets at the school's student union at the school's entrance. Finally, each school stall would be scored based on the number of tokens their shops received. After the scoring was completed, the tokens received by each class would be converted into RMB according to the original exchange price and distributed to each class's activity budget as class fees. I don't have much money this month, and you're actually adding to my burden. Come to think of it, in terms of wealth, aren't you richer than me? Su Xinxing rubbed the lowly's soft cheeks and said angrily, No choice. At first, the lowly waved her short arms and legs and struggled, vaguely shouting divine punishment, blasphemy, and so on. However, it didn't take long for her to surrender. You don't know, after I was kicked out of Sakura apartment by you, I saw a mess when I got home. I don't know who destroyed my cave residence, and all the collections I collected with great difficulty were basically destroyed. At this point, the lowly's eyes were empty, and she looked extremely empty. Her body curled up into a small ball, and she looked extremely pitiful. Everything's gone. Figurines, HT full set of Iron Man, BD, home console, dreams. As the culprit, Su Xinxing looked embarrassed. He let go of the girl's cheeks, and then coughed dryly, and his eyes wandered. Cough, we can be considered old friends. In the past, when I was fighting demons, you helped me deal with the aftermath more than once or twice, so I'll forgive you this time. Is that so? Thank you so much. Not good. A sense of guilt was bubbling up from the bottom of her heart. I thought that this time, I would definitely be on the streets and live a miserable life for a long time. This indescribable sense of guilt was about to flow into a river. Hey, maid over there, quickly give me a portion of everything on the menu. Put it all on this guy's head. Although you're a bald lolicon and stingy guy, there are times when you're kind, and it seemed that he was still a bit too lenient. Chapter 301. Everything started when he found that worn-out hat in the attic of his home. It was a pointy hat that only witches in fairy tales would wear. It was obviously an outdated hat that could only be used during cosplay, but she was unexpectedly very concerned about it. After asking her parents, she found out that the hat was actually a relic of her grandmother that she had never met. Although her grandmother had passed away before she was born, for some reason, the people around her had an unusual respect and nostalgia for her. Even he himself had a wonderful longing for his grandmother under the influence of what he had seen and heard. Probably because of this, after knowing that the hat was a relic of her grandmother, she didn't plan to throw it away. Then one day, she was attacked. It was a monster that came from the mirror. It looked like a giant black crocodile, but it was much more ugly and ferocious than a crocodile. It was like a creature that crawled out of the abyss of hell. It had an extremely terrifying appearance and evil aura. Even if it looked at you, it would make you tremble. At one point, she even felt despair and thought that she would die just like that. In the end, the thing that saved her life was the hat that was placed not far from the bed. Although a hat that suddenly spoke was very strange, compared to a terrifying monster, it was obviously safer. So with the help and guidance of a hat, she transformed. Magical girl, she had transformed into an inconceivable existence that only existed in anime. She went all out and destroyed the monster that was very weak in the hat's eyes, and obtained something like a ring from the monster's body. Holy ring. That was what the hat called the ring, a treasure that shone with silver light. It was said that a long, long time ago, this world was once called the destroyer of the world because of the greed of mankind and their addiction to destruction. That was the strongest existence that mankind could not resist. No matter what method they used to resist, there was no suspense. And that existence, because of mankind's deep-rooted bad habits, identified them as malignant tumors and planned to destroy all of mankind in this world. The Destroyer of Worlds was so powerful that it only needed a single thought to wipe out all humans from existence. If that was the case, this world would never be able to give birth to humans, because that possibility was simply non-existent. At that critical moment, a young girl stood out and blocked the other party's thoughts with a pure and flawless spirit that only wanted to protect the other party's heart and spirit. The price was that the girl's existence would be completely evaporated. From then on, humans would no longer have the slightest impression of the great person who had once saved them. But it was that girl's sacrifice that changed the world's destroyer's view of the humans in this world. Therefore, he changed his mind and decided not to destroy the humans in this world. He bestowed the 3 great calamities and 7 calamities upon the humans. Whenever the evil thoughts in the human world accumulated to a certain extent, the 3 calamities and 7 calamities would be revived and quietly wreak havoc in the human world in the form of monsters until the entire human world was destroyed. Regrettably, humans were not creatures that could control themselves. Evil thoughts would continue to accumulate with every passing moment and finally break through the warning line set by the Destroyer of Worlds. The 7 calamities were the first to be revived. The Black Death, volcanic eruptions, plagues, earthquakes, ice ages, wars, genocide. Calamities of both nature and man continued to occur everywhere, and the survival of mankind once again became precarious. It was fortunate that the girl who had stopped the Destroyer of Worlds back then had completely vanished, but she left behind the 7 items that she carried with her, each of which retained the girl's will to protect all of mankind. When the kind girl obtained any of those items, she would trigger the will that the item carried, turning her into a magical girl who protected mankind. And the witch's hat she found was naturally one of those 7 items. Afterward, she also learned that her grandmother had once become a magical girl and successfully defeated 3 of the 7 calamities and prevented the occurrence of the 3 great calamities, successfully saving the world once. Even if the people around her did not know this, because her grandmother's achievements were indelible to the entire human race, and her existence was not evaporated like the magical girl who had saved all of mankind, as long as one was a human, regardless of skin color, race, language, or religion. When they saw her grandmother, they would feel respect and reverence from the bottom of their hearts. But even so, in the process of fighting the monsters, especially in the final battle, her grandmother was severely injured. Because of that, she became sickly and weak, and in the end, she died young just like that. She did not even get to see what her granddaughter looked like. After learning so many secrets in the beginning, she did not want to continue inheriting the magical girl's power to fight those monsters. After all, a day ago, she was just an ordinary human. Moreover, even the grandmother she looked forward to, in the end, died early because of the battle with the monsters, leaving her grandfather alone for the rest of his life. So, compared to becoming a hero for all of mankind, an ordinary day was more precious. This thought continued until a monster attacked her best friend and turned her into a vegetable. According to the hat, after the monster was purified, the evil thoughts would also disappear, leaving behind only the purest thoughts of humanity. And these thoughts will condense into an unexpected essence, and under the curse left behind by the Destroyer of the World, it will be distorted and formed into a crystal called Holy Ring. When the Holy Ring is collected, one will be able to fulfill a wish. Of course, this wish has a limit. At most, what kind of miracle can happen depends on how pure and powerful the Holy Ring is. But at least it can wake up a vegetable, or even bring a dead person back to life. It can be done. She hated those monsters, worried that others around her would also be attacked, and wanted to save her friends. Under these 3 beliefs, she finally made up her mind to become a magical girl and defeat the monsters that appeared because of the 7 calamities, the nightmare, and collect the Holy Ring so that her friends could wake up. Chapter 302. However, the collection of the Holy Ring did not go smoothly. Just like in all magical girl anime, not long after she made up her mind, she met other magical girls like herself. Her name was Ling, and she had inherited her ancestors' magic book. Like herself, the other party had a reason to collect the Holy Ring. Ling had once caused a major accident because of her own mistake. Many people had been injured or even died because of that accident. Her wish was to return to the time before the accident and stop herself from making such a stupid mistake. The sudden appearance of competitors was one thing, and the other thing was that the nightmares were getting stronger and stronger, to the point that she found it difficult to deal with them. This was not surprising, as the hat had already suggested that if the nightmares were not dealt with as soon as possible, under the influence of the Holy Ring's power, they would definitely become stronger and stronger as time passed. Inevitably, she met other magical girls besides Ling. Every one of them had their own will. Perhaps it was for their own selfish desires, or perhaps it was for the greater good of humanity, but they were just like her, gambling their lives in a corner that ordinary people couldn't see, fighting monsters. In the battle, she saw many people. There are the destitute. There are those who exploit others. There are those who give quietly. There are those who plunder recklessly. There are those who strive diligently. There are those who eat and do nothing. There are those who stand high. There are those who live hard. Some people were disgusting, angering the world for their own selfish desires. Some people had boundless love and devoted their lives, moving people. Humans were a whole. They were annoying, but at the same time, they were lovable. In the end, she finally understood her own heart. She wanted to be like her grandmother, to protect mankind. Even though mankind had many shortcomings now, they were definitely not incurable. The fate of mankind lay in their own hands. At the very least, they could not let the so-called 3 disasters and 7 catastrophes decide the fate of mankind for them. Every time she fought with other magical girls because of the Holy Ring, it was a clash of wills. She did not know how much time had passed, but because the enemies were getting stronger and stronger, she had no choice but to work together. However, she found that unknowingly, they had an indescribable tacit understanding with the other magical girls. This was because they had long understood each other in battle, and the goal of everyone's protection had gradually shifted from the narrow focus of family and friends to the entire human race. Just like the magical girls of the past, perhaps they all had some small shortcomings as individuals. Some were arrogant, some were not good at communicating, some were afraid of insects, and some had subtle sexual orientations. However, this did not affect their joint efforts for the common goal. Even the final ownership of the Holy Ring had long been forgotten. They decided to make a decision after they had gathered all the members. After the proposal was passed, she saw a look of determination on the faces of the other magical girls. However, there was a subtle deviation in the plan. When they successfully purified the last of the 7 calamities that had awakened decades ago, the 3 calamities suddenly awakened and killed 2 of the magical girls when they were caught off guard. Even though they were prepared to die in battle, this sudden turn of events was still a huge blow to the magical girls' worldview. The tragic death of their companions in front of them made them even more grieved. In the end, the magical girls' team fell apart just like that. Even she was greatly affected by the disintegration of the team that she had built with her own hands. She locked herself in her room to grieve alone. At that time, Ling appeared in front of her. The girl who had always been stubborn kicked down the door of her room and brought her out. Ling said, since she was able to unite the magical girls once, she would definitely be able to do it a second time. At this time, it was normal for the other magical girls to be sad and depressed. However, at least as the team leader and the first magical girl to view the entire human race as her protectors, how could she continue to be so depressed? Of course, this was just the general idea. In fact, the girl's original words were much harsher. However, it was undeniable that those words had indeed worked. She was no longer at a loss. She began to persuade the magical girls who had left the team one by one with Ling to gather all the surviving magical girls once again. Although the hope was slim, they decided to crusade against the 3 calamities. This was undoubtedly the final battle. If they succeeded, The human race would not be destroyed and would be spared. If they failed, the human race would be destroyed by the 3 calamities. Unlike the 7 calamities that continuously brought suffering to the human race, any one of the 3 calamities could completely destroy the human race. At the same time, the magical girls understood that there would definitely be sacrifices in this battle. However, no one retreated. When they took that step, they did not realize that they, who were once ordinary human girls, had become true heroes. What surprised her was that on the eve of the final battle, Ling found her and said something that she did not understand. The moonlight tonight is so beautiful. The next day, the battle that put the future of the human race on the line began just like that. The final battle was unquestionably tragic. By the time they had defeated the first 2 calamities that had not fully awakened and arrived in front of the final enemy, the magical girls had already been killed. Only Ling and her were left. Ling was the strongest among them, so he had survived until the end. As for her, although no one had said anything like that, in the previous battle, every magical girl had tacitly acknowledged her as the team leader. They subconsciously protected her during the battle and tried their best to give her a chance to defeat the enemy. However, the final enemy was too strong. They did not even have a chance to retaliate before Ling, and she were easily defeated. Not only that, the enemy did not even care about the 2 of them and directly threw the earth to the surface of the sun. Under the high temperature of more than 6,000 degrees Celsius, the earth melted into magma. Due to the earth's rotation, large pieces of the earth's surface were thrown into the air by centrifugal force. Almost half of the ocean evaporated in an instant. The human race was completely wiped out. Unlike her, who regretted her incompetence, Ling was still struggling even at this point. She used everything she had as fuel and burned everything, including her soul and memory, to push the timeline forward by 3 minutes, turning the doomsday scene into a state that had not happened yet. Actually, what I wanted to say yesterday was, when Ling's entire body was engulfed by the magical flames, a gentle expression that had never been seen before appeared on his face. I like you the most. That's why you have to live on. Then, you have to save the entire human race. Even as Ling disappeared into the flames, his gentle voice still echoed in her ears. This is my last bit of magic. Take it, Ning Ning. Ling, oh. She let out a sorrowful cry and pierced the enemy's chest with a long sword made of magic power. Chapter 303. Cui Ying felt a bit disappointed when she saw Emoli busying himself in the coffee shop and stealing food. Originally, Emoli was a difficult child to get close to. Should she say that he was too childish, or that his values were different from normal people? In short, there weren't many people in school who were close to Emoli. In fact, even Cui Ying was a bit afraid of Emoli in the beginning. But after a series of events, she and Emoli inexplicably became close friends. Although most of the time, she was just helping Emoli take the blame and clean up after him. Speaking of which, Cui Ying couldn't remember the key events of her and Emoli's intimacy, as if a part of her memory was missing. But over time, she got used to it. However, she didn't know if it was because of the recent increase in guests at Sakura Apartments, but Emoli seemed to have changed and was different from before. Should she say that he seemed more lively than before, or that his expressions were more lively? If it was before, she would have refused to participate in this kind of activity because she thought it was too troublesome. The girl thought absent-mindedly. At this time, something cold was suddenly pressed against her face, causing her to stand up in surprise. Emoli. She turned around and saw that it was Emoli holding a sundae. A gift. Emoli stuffed the sundae into Cui Ying's hands and quickly ran away. But even though the maid coffee shop was extremely popular, Emoli didn't seem to want to go in and help. Instead, he secretly stayed near the fridge, as if he wanted to steal some ice cream. Yep, he's still the normal Emoli. After confirming that Emoli didn't become diligent, Cui Ying found herself strangely happy. She stuck out her tongue, feeling a bit shy about her unexplained happiness. Not only that, it was probably because he saw her sitting there doing nothing that Mo Lee specially brought her a sundae. It was obviously just a small favor, but Chui Yingying felt very happy in her heart. This kind of feeling was probably similar to a parent's feeling of, my child has finally grown up after hearing their child say to them that it had been hard on him. But Mo Lee's maid outfit is really cute. Chui Yingying thought to herself as she ate the sundae. As she thought about it, she suddenly remembered that she seemed to have picked up a ring on the side of the road. Since he had nothing to do, he might as well put the ring in the lost and found office. With that in mind, she took out the ring from her pocket. Although the ring looked rather plain, it had a peculiar charm that seemed to make people unable to help but fall in love with it. If Mo Lee were to wear this ring, it would definitely fit him, right? Also, Mo Lee is still in maid attire. Maid attire is actually quite pretty. Just as she was thinking about this, Su Xinxing happened to pass by. And it might even affect her father and Mo Lee, who had a good relationship with her. I don't want people to know that I picked this up. It's better to send it to the lost and found office. The girl sighed and used the ring to change her clothes back to her original appearance. Then she began to recall the map of Jiangjin University that she had seen on the board. Where's the lost and found office again? As soon as she finished speaking, she appeared in front of a small room with a sign that said Lost and Found Office. The girl, who was still in shock, looked around. Fortunately, it seemed that no one was paying attention to her. Otherwise, things would be bad. Wiping the cold sweat on her forehead, the girl quietly left the place. Not far away, a somewhat rustic-looking boy glanced at them. Tu Hua, what's wrong? Asked a person who seemed to be his classmate. Nothing. The boy called Tu Hua shook his head and subconsciously touched the hard object hidden under his clothes at his waist. I probably saw wrong. Chapter 304. Her consciousness gradually returned to her body. Yuezheng Ningming slowly opened her eyes. Oh, you're finally awake, partner. The voice of the wizard Hat Sereno, who had led her into the world of magic and had been by her side all this time, rang in her ears. Sereno, the girl suddenly woke up. What about the holy ring? What happened to the holy ring? Did I get the holy ring in the end? Unfortunately, partner, there was a problem in the end, and the holy ring fell into this world. What's worse is that the magic factor in this world is very rare, and the amount of magic in the atmosphere is pitifully low. I'm afraid that we can no longer use large-scale magic in this world. That's really bad. Is it blank mode? The girl shook her ears and tried to calm herself down. Blank mode was the state that a girl would be in when she had just become a magical girl because she had not yet mastered the power within. It could be said that it was her weakest state. It's worse than that, but compared to the other bad news, it's not bad. Sereno said with I'm sorry tone. The other bad news? Yuezheng Ningming wagged her tail and asked curiously. Then she realized something was wrong. Why was she able to shake her ears and wag her tail? It seems that you have no recollection of the situation when you came to this world. The wizard hat sighed pretentiously, even though it did not have an organ like a mouth. At that time, it was really bad. Due to overexertion, your magic device was damaged to varying degrees. After you came to this world, due to the lack of magic supply around you, your body showed signs of severe magic overdraft. Do you know what that means? Yuezheng Ningming did not answer, although she had never encountered such a situation before. After all, one of her natural abilities was to subconsciously gather the magic in the atmosphere to quickly restore her own magic. But when she fought against the nightmares, she had seen the symptoms of magic overdraft of other magical girls. Their bodies would strangely crystallize, and if they did not replenish their magic in time, the crystallized body parts would turn into powder and fall to the ground. Could it be that he was in the same situation now? Although I've tried my best to retrieve your body, it's very difficult to collect it because it fell from a high altitude. Moreover, I'm not a magic device that can move freely, so the amount I can collect is very limited. Sereno continued in his apologetic tone. In the end, I had no choice but to do this to save your life. What have I become? Ningning couldn't help but worry. Sereno didn't say anything. Instead, he shook his hand and summoned a mirror that floated in front of the girl. There was a Xiaohei cat in the mirror. She was wearing a cute pointy sorcerer's hat. Her eyes were wide open as she stared at the mirror. Her fur stood on end as if she was frightened. Even her tail was standing straight up. You must be joking. Ningning's entire body, the entire cat, was frozen in shock. Don't worry. Although you've turned into a cat, you still have your magic power and spellcasting ability. Moreover, if you can find the holy ring, all of this can be easily solved. The sorcerer's hat tried to comfort her. Although it's only my estimation, the holy ring's power is probably enough to reshape the entire earth. It won't be difficult to revive the others and restore you to your original state. Fortunately, Ningning had faced despair before, and had even saved the entire human race. Her mental fortitude wasn't that weak, and she quickly adjusted her state of mind. Is the holy ring that powerful? She shifted her attention to the other side, and stopped herself from thinking about the fact that she had turned into a cat. Speaking of which, what kind of existence is the destroyer of worlds? Just a trace of his consciousness left behind can create the 3 great calamities, 7 calamities, and the holy ring, something so incredible, I don't know. What a straightforward answer. Nonsense, because I'm just a hat that belonged to my original owner. I only gained consciousness after my owner sacrificed himself to resist the thought of the destroyer of worlds. Of course, I don't know anything about the destroyer of worlds. The hat replied matter-of-factly. How much hope do you have for a hat? Ningning was speechless and sighed. Then, where's the holy ring? Don't tell me you don't know. If that's the case, the world is so big, I don't want to explore it in the form of a cat. Thanks to the thin magic in this world, I can barely feel the approximate location of the holy ring. After all, that's what I use it for. However, because of the thin magic, I can only feel the approximate location. You'll have to find a way to find it yourself. It's okay, as long as you can feel it. Ningning was rather optimistic. Anyway, I'm already used to this kind of troublesome situation. She didn't know why, but many times, things that were simple at the beginning would become inexplicably complicated and troublesome as long as the girl took action. After they got to know each other better, Ling even joked with her that Ningning had the constitution of a protagonist who would easily cause trouble and get involved in it. I don't want such a troublesome constitution. Ningning's heart ached when she thought of Ling's final smile in the magic flames. To be honest, compared to whether or not we can find the holy ring, I'm more worried that the holy ring will be found by ordinary people. Sereno's voice became slightly more serious. What's wrong? Is there a limit to the number of wishes one can make? Ningning asked curiously. No, as long as the holy ring's magic hasn't been exhausted, or its stability hasn't disappeared, in other words, it hasn't expired, it can always fulfill the wishes of the holder, the hat said seriously. The hat said seriously, the problem is that only a magical girl can make a wish with the right posture. If an ordinary person casually made a wish, their own desires would easily trigger the evil thoughts in the holy ring that had already been purified, causing the holy ring to once again experience the 3 calamities and 7 calamities. The mana in this world is too thin, and the possibility of a powerful existence, or an existence like a magical girl, is extremely low. And from what I've seen so far, this world is at most similar to our world, let alone the 3 calamities. Even the 7 calamities that suddenly erupt would be difficult to deal with. I understand. In other words, we have to find the holy ring before it's discovered, right? Ningning took a deep breath. Then, there's no time to dilly-dally. Let's go. When Xiaohei the cat pulled herself together and walked out of the alley, she bumped into a little girl in a dress. Ah, a strange Xiaohei the cat. The girl's eyes lit up as she approached Ningning with interest. The magical girl who had turned into a cat didn't know how to react. You're still wearing a hat, Chiketsu. Don't run around. Behind the little girl, a girl in a maid's uniform said softly, "Follow me. I'll bring you to Su Xinxing." Chapter 305. Song Yu. Sister, you don't have to send me off. I know where brother's school is, Chiketsu said helplessly as he turned around and hugged the black cat that he had caught with much difficulty. No, Chiketsu, you just moved here not long ago. What if you get lost? That's why I have to send you off. Song Yu said firmly. Then she looked at the black cat worriedly. Also, I think it's better not to catch wild cats. It'll be troublesome if you get bitten or scratched. As someone who had seen supernatural beings and was almost hurt by them, Song Yu naturally knew that there were some strange creatures in Jiangjin, no matter how she looked at it. This black cat wearing a hat did not look like a creature that would appear under normal circumstances. So she tried to persuade the little girl. It's okay. Look, isn't it obedient? Chiketsu held up the black cat like it was a treasure and shook it in front of Song Yu. This made Song Yu worry that her actions would provoke the strange cat. In addition, this scene also reminded Song Yu of the cat that she had picked up some time ago. Unfortunately, not long after she changed the cat's clothes, it went missing. Song Yu was disappointed for a long time. Fortunately, the black cat seemed to be pretending to be dead. It did not move at all and looked very obedient. Just when Song Yu was still hesitating, Chiketsu laughed like a little devil. And Sister Song Yu, instead of saying that you want to send me off, you just want to see brother, right? That's not it. Song Yu's face turned red, and she subconsciously refuted. But then she realized that her reaction was too intense. It was as if she had confessed without being pressed. Chiketsu let out a pigeon-like laugh, then carried the black cat and ran quickly towards Jiangjin University. Ah, really? Song Yu had no choice but to quicken her pace and follow. At this time, Yuezhing Ningning was in a rather awkward situation. Because he wasn't familiar with the cat's body, he couldn't react in time and was caught by Chiketsu. Although her body had turned into that of a cat, Ningning was still a magical girl. Her basic stamina was much stronger than a normal little girl like Chiketsu. If she was determined to escape, she could easily break free from the girl's embrace. There were two reasons why she didn't do that. First, it was easy to hurt Ichiyue if she struggled too hard. Although Luzheng Ningning was troubled by the current situation, it wasn't enough to make her hurt an innocent person. Second, there was a translucent English fold lying on Ichiyue's shoulder. Its big cat eyes were staring at Ningning. It was a guardian spirit. Although it wasn't common, Ningning, who was a magical girl, had seen this kind of creature before. Most of them were relatively kind. They could protect their host from being affected by supernatural forces that were judged as malicious. They also wouldn't cause any hindrance to their host's life. After the power of their soul was exhausted, they would naturally disappear. However, most of the guardian spirits that Yuezhing Ningning had encountered in the past were formed after the death of their loved ones. After all, as the spirit of all things, human souls could exist in the world of the living for much longer than ordinary beasts. Occasionally, she would see a canine guardian spirit, but this was the first time she saw a cat as a guardian spirit. Not only that, although they didn't fight, Yuezhing Ningning inexplicably felt a strong sense of danger from a cat. This meant that the cat guardian spirit might be a great threat to her. Theoretically speaking, this was impossible. Most guardian spirits were basically the remnant souls of the dead. They weren't that strong when they were alive, let alone after death. It was because of the existence of the cat guardian spirit that Yuezhing Ningning didn't have the confidence to break free from it without hurting the little girl. Therefore, she could only obediently lie in the little girl's arms. Sereno, stop pretending to be dead. Hurry up and think of a way. Fortunately, her connection with her magic device wasn't interrupted. Yuezhing Ningning desperately tried to speak to the wizard hat. I have good news and bad news. Which do you want to hear first? After a moment of silence, Sereno asked his little master in return. Good news first and bad news later will make you feel bad. So listen to the bad news first. Yuezhing Ningning thought for a moment and immediately replied. The bad news is that my previous prediction was wrong. Although the magic power in this world is very low, it seems that there are some unbelievably powerful creatures. You mean the cat guardian spirit on the little girl's shoulder that is staring at me? Not only that, But the pearl necklace on the girl's neck also has a mysterious energy that I can't analyze. Although I don't know what it's used for, if that energy is released, I'm afraid it can directly create a basin on the plains. I'm afraid that the shellfish that gave birth to the pearl itself is an incredible monster. Sereno clicked his tongue, although as a hat, he didn't have a tongue. But if the pearl of such a powerful creature can be taken, Ningning was in disbelief. That's right. In other words, there are at least powerful creatures that are stronger than those monsters in this world. I knew that the provincial environment wouldn't come to a low-magic world for no reason. After hearing the hat's words, Yuezhing Ningning fell silent. The more powerful the creatures in this world, the more difficult it would be to retrieve the holy ring. After thinking for a long time, she continued to ask the hat, "Then what about the good news you were talking about?" If I were to say that the good news is that I saw a nice hat shop earlier and that the pink lady's hat hanging in the window is my type, I'll throw you to Old Wong's dog as a toy. By the way, Old Wong was Ningning's neighbor, and he had a husky that was full of energy all year round. The husky's favorite activity was to make Old Wong's house look like a thief and then pretend to be innocent and lie under the bed, even after applying powder from his favorite dog food brand. Okay, I'm just kidding. Sereno seemed to imagine the consequences of doing that, and couldn't help but shiver. Then he said in a pleasant tone, "Actually, you just have to pretend to be a normal cat now." Why? Because if I'm not mistaken, the destination of their trip seems to be the general location of the holy ring that I sensed earlier. 1/3. Chapter 306. The ring that she picked up was not as simple as being able to change clothes at will, but it could grant any wish. Cui Yingying ran back to the empty classroom. After a series of experiments, she finally confirmed the true ability of the ring to a certain extent. At the moment, she was surrounded by all kinds of snacks, beautiful clothes, cute stuffed animals, and a squirrel that was stepping on a wheel. After hesitating for a moment, she made another wish to make all those things disappear. Her father often warned her that there was no such thing as a free lunch in the world. Anything that could be obtained without working for it was basically not a good thing. So in fact, after Cui Yingying confirmed that the ring could grant wishes, the first thing that came to her mind was not to use it to do a series of earth-shattering things, nor did she think of using it to make herself rich and powerful. Instead, she began to think about whether this thing would be harmful. For example, if she wished to eat something, would it not be able to create food out of thin air, but would it be able to draw nearby food that met the conditions in front of her? Although at first glance, there seemed to be no difference between the two, to the girl, it was very important. The former was a pure wish-granting machine without any sequelae. The latter was a grafting of her own desire onto the loss of others. It did not create matter out of thin air and was beyond the scope of physics. It could only be regarded as a means to benefit oneself at the expense of others. This ring could not be considered a wish-granting machine, but a simple transporter. Although the process was different based on the previous wishes, it was no different from the actions of a thief. This was not impossible, because from the previous wishes, the sudden appearance of things was no different from the situation where Cui Yingying was teleported to the lost and found office. They were both things that could be achieved by teleportation. Because of this, when the girl wished to make those things disappear, she did not directly use the phrase "make them disappear," but "let them return to their original place." In the end, it worked. This made Cui Yingying think that the ring's ability was likely to be the second type, which was to benefit oneself at the expense of others. Of course, there was no way to confirm this with just a sentence. The girl was just guessing. However, it was not difficult to verify her guess. She just needed to make a wish that could not be fulfilled from a purely physical point of view and see if it could be fulfilled. For example, the resurrection of the dead. If it could bring the dead back to life, then the power of the ring would not just be a simple transporter, but a true treasure that could grant wishes. As for the resurrection candidates, Mom, Cui Yingying came from a single-parent family. Her mother died in an accident when she was a child. After her mother's death, Her father did not remarry. Instead, he began to indulge in work. She did not know if he was really busy with work or if he simply wanted to use work to numb himself. Not long after her mother passed away, Cui Yingying began to take over the household chores at a young age. She never resented her father. After all, she was able to live a relatively prosperous life, all because of her father's hard work. Moreover, her father didn't abandon her. Every once in a while, he would find time to go home and accompany Cui Yingying. Cui Yingying had always felt that she was very happy compared to some families that were even more miserable. However, this did not prevent her from envying other children who had mothers. She envied them for being able to enjoy the taste of motherly love at all times, and for being able to enjoy the care and care of their mothers. If only his mother had survived that accident, how great would that have been? Sometimes, Cui Yingying would think that too. However, in the past, these thoughts were just pure dreams. The saying that the dead cannot be brought back to life wasn't just for show. However, today, there was an incredible opportunity in front of her. Cui Yingying did not have any desire for material things or money. However, she only wanted to be cared for by others. She wanted to be able to feel warmth. This was something she had always yearned for. Therefore, when she had just met Jasmine, even though she had clearly been disgraced by the other party's rude requests, she had still stayed by Jasmine's side. It was also because she had felt that Jasmine valued her. "I'm really a greedy person." Cui Yingying gripped the ring tightly with both hands. Then, she placed it on her forehead and silently made a wish in her heart. "If you can, please, if it's possible, I really hope that the person who picked up the holy ring only wishes for material things and money." Sereno was still teaching Yuezhing Ningning about the holy ring. "No, even if they wish for power or something like that, it won't affect this world too much. However, if they wish for something that goes against the laws of nature, then we'll be in big trouble." "Against the laws of nature?" Yuezhing Ningning asked curiously. "Is it something like reversing the seasons?" "That counts, but to be more specific, it's something like stopping time or bringing back the dead." "Wait, Sereno, didn't you say that the holy ring can bring the dead back to life?" Yuezhing Ningning's mind was in a mess. "Why now? I'm not lying. I'm not lying. If we were still in our world, the holy ring could indeed bring the dead back to life. After all, the holy ring itself is the sublimation of the collective will of the people in that world." Sereno replied in a deep voice. "The problem is that this world isn't our world." Meow. Yuezhing Ningning let out a cry of realization. With the sublimation of the collective will of the human race as the source of power, the universal wishing machine in their world would naturally have a distorted effect in another world. If it was only material needs, such as money, it could be easily met within the limits of the world, and it would not interfere with the current world. However, power and the like would inevitably be involved with the humans in the current world and would have a certain degree of influence on the world itself. However, this was also within the limits of the world. However, if the Holy Ring wanted to reverse the laws of the world in the current world, or even destroy the laws themselves, it would definitely trigger a violent rejection from the current world. As for what kind of reaction it would have, neither Sereno nor Yuezhing Ningning knew. The only thing they were sure of was that it would not be a good thing. "Is this position hurting you, kitten?" Chiketsu probably thought that Ningning was crying out because he was holding her in the wrong position, so he changed to a position that was even more embarrassing for Ningning. "Is this okay?" Ningning wanted to struggle, but the guardian spirit on the girl's shoulder was staring at her, so she did not have the energy to do so. Meow. In the end, she could only rub her whiskers and meow softly. 2/3. Chapter 307. Actually, you don't have to worry too much. Sensing that his master was in low spirits, the wizard continued to comfort her. The holy ring might not be found by the people of this world. Even if they did, they would need a certain amount of spirit to activate the holy ring. Normal people wouldn't be able to discover the uniqueness of the holy ring so easily. "Is that so?" Yuezhing Ningning replied in low spirits. "That's right. Even if someone did find it and discovered the uniqueness of the holy ring, they would only wish for material things, so you don't have to worry too much. What the hell? Before Sereno could finish his sentence, the mountain where Jiangjin University was located was shrouded in a gray mist. If someone in this world had the ability of mana vision, they would be able to see the dark red, blood-like magical energy flowing through the mist. Sereno, all right, I admit that I jinxed it. But if that's the case, we won't be able to continue waiting for these two ladies to send us to the other side. After reaching an agreement with her magic device, Yuezhing Ningning took advantage of the gray mist around Jiangjin University to distract the guardian spirit of Chiketsu and leaped away. Even though she had tried her best to overestimate the abilities of the guardian spirit, she still underestimated the power of the guardian spirit that was once protected by Su Xinxing. Almost at the same time, the British short-hair guardian spirit reacted and threw a cat punch at Yuezhing Ningning. If an ordinary person were to see this scene, they would probably think that two cats were fighting. But only Yuezhing Ningning, who was in the middle of it, could feel the ferocity of the cat punch. Yuezhing Ningning had used all her remaining magical energy to construct a defense and entrusted Sereno to control the magic while she focused on dodging the attack. However, the attack still caused Yuezhing Ningning to suffer the damage of being hit by an overloaded 100-yard, 16-wheeler truck. If it weren't for the fact that the magical girl had a high resistance to damage and wouldn't die even if she was hit by a building, this attack would have been enough to turn her into minced meat. Are you kidding me? Is the guardian spirit of this world really that terrifying? Yuezhing Ningning, who was desperately running into an alley, said with a bitter smile, Sereno, is this world really a low magic world? Sereno? I'm sorry. The wizard with the pointed hat replied in a weak tone. His voice sounded very faint, as if a gust of wind could blow him away. That attack just now, I've also suffered a considerable amount of damage. I might need to rest for a while. Run to the holy ring first. Wait for me. Sereno, Ningning shouted a few times, but the other party didn't respond at all. The girl's heart sank. Even when Sereno fought against the three great calamities, this had never happened to him. Could it be that the guardian spirit was stronger than the three great calamities? The black cat shook its head and threw this unrealistic thought out of its mind. It must have suffered some internal injuries when fighting against the three great calamities. The attack just now was like a trigger, causing the internal injuries to erupt. The girl comforted herself in her heart. No matter what, the most important thing now was to find the holy ring and restore everything. She had failed. Cui Yingying sat on the ground, paralyzed. Outside the window, a strange red light drilled out from the ground and floated into the sky, forming a horrifying scene like a sea of blood. If one looked closely, they would find that the once bustling campus was now empty. Not a single person could be seen. What exactly happened? The girl was a little flustered. She put the ring on her forehead and made another wish. Let everything return to normal. But this time, the wish didn't have any effect. It was as if the world had abandoned her. Sure enough, there was no such thing as a free lunch in the world. Trying to pursue something that didn't belong to you would end up like this. Cui Yingying bitterly smiled. At this time, a bone-chilling creaking sound came from outside the window. Not long after, many white skeletons crawled in from outside. Skeletons, this was a common unit of cannon fodder in fantasy novels. But for a normal person, especially an underage girl, these skeletons that could move freely were already extremely terrifying. This made the girl who was already paralyzed on the ground feel her legs go soft. She couldn't even run away. This was the result of making a random wish. As the last moment of her life approached, the girl thought in her heart. Tianzi understood. However, at this moment, two voices sounded one after another. Then, a white light flashed, and those skeletons became bone fragments on the ground in a way that fit their role as cannon fodder. The girl trembled as she turned her head and found a familiar boy holding a broken sword in his hand and talking to a woman in ancient clothes floating beside him. I knew it. Seeing that guy surnamed Su was definitely not a good thing. The boy looked impatient. Damn, it's a pity that I ran too late, and was still involved. I was only one step away from leaving this school. I think it's quite interesting, don't you think? I haven't been able to stretch my muscles for a long time. And recently, I don't know if it's my illusion, but you always seem to ignore me intentionally or unintentionally. Because talking to the air will be regarded as delusional or chinibyu, the boy said without hesitation. And my dream is to be an ordinary person, the kind of business elite who works in a company with good benefits, and not spend my life with a sword spirit that others can't see. Why, from the moment you were chosen by my sword, you were destined to be unable to become an ordinary person. Okay, the target is Jiazi Garden. Ah, I was wrong. Don't throw the sword out of the window. Cui Ying looked at these two people with a dumbfounded expression, and then she noticed that the woman in the palace dress was floating in the air. That who are you people? Thinking that the other party had just saved her, and the somewhat funny conversation before made them not look like bad people. The girl tried her best to calm down and asked, "That's a good question. I am a non-staff member of the super administrative office, probably. Can't you let me sing a name once in a while? Because it's too long. I'll be scolded for making up the word count. 3/3. That you're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.